do any good.
Welcome everybody to another edition of Hot Program. I am your host with the most, all the way from the East Coast, and as always, folks, I am in airplane mode, and I am joined by a man with a plan who could use a plan B and C most of the time. A man who needs no introduction. How you doing today?
I'm having a day. I'm having a week, and it's only Sunday.
Same.
It's the beginning of the week.
Same.
Beginning of the week.
Same.
Terrifying.
We're good. We
Too
are in the cafe. If you'd like to join us. Cheers to everybody at home. I hope you're having a good weekend and ready for a good week. Now look, we have got a good show for you guys, and I gotta be honest, I really think today's show is going to be a challenge for atheists. And
not me, but other atheists.
Oh yeah, no. and I really think that this is started by what I heard on James Apperson's stream yesterday. Unfortunately, James is trying to switch over to the world of recording his videos first. I think James popped in. Yeah.
Well, all right.
James, you here? Can you hear us?
It would be great. Oh, wonderful, because I was hoping if you could speak for yourself, you would.
Yes.
Because we could get all sorts of non-pre-recorded insight from you.
Yes.
Well, to be clear, before this trial even begins, I have no alibi. I have no excuse. I burned the town down on purpose.
But James, that's kind of what we're here for. I think you had a message that is really powerful, but I do wonder if the atheists in our community heard what I hear as the challenge for them. So look, we're going to have to go through this for people that didn't hear it. We're not going to play the whole thing, but I want to play the beginning of James. It's probably about the first 10 minutes. I want to play from the beginning of James's video until when he reads his written piece. And then we're going to touch on a couple of things, and we've got a Sam Harris pull piece up for later. So, James, thanks so much for joining us. Let's go ahead and listen to the beginning of your stream. We'll probably listen to about the first 10 minutes or so, James.
All right. Good day to everybody.
Today
is March 18th, 2023, 12:05 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This will be my very last live stream ever on this channel. I have several reasons for that, but I probably won't get into today.
He's going to keep making videos.
I was about to record this instead and just upload it, which is going to be what I do from now on this channel. However, when I went to go do so, StreamYard notified me that I can't because I have things stored in their storage, and it won't even let me begin to record without clearing that out first. So I'm like, fine. Hello, Melody Joy. So this is, again, my last live stream on this channel ever. And I was going to do a recording, but I couldn't make that work in StreamYard today. So
I was devastated.
Make a quick 10-minute stream on this topic, and then I'm going to jump back out. Again, from now on, after this, all of my content in this channel will be recordings.
Probably.
So, moving forward, the issue came up today. I watched a video that was a clip from the atheist experience, and I guess I'll go ahead and share that right now to get us started with thinking about that. So, let me grab that real quick. Preset, share screen, evidence. There we go. So hopefully this plays okay. Let's listen to the clip first, and then we'll talk about it. Or I should say, I'll talk about it, and you guys will listen. How's that for a plan? Well, all right.
It's like, do you believe on faith or do you believe on evidence?
I never talked about evidence. I was
what do
talking
you
about
think?
faith.
You don't think
you were
hearing
talking
God's
about.
voice?
You said you hear God's voice.
That's not evidence. That's
It's
faith.
not?
I have an experience with God.
So you
That's
don't
my
actually hear
personal
God's voice.
experience.
That's not really happening. You just believe that you hear it, but it's not really hearing it.
It's like I have the Holy Spirit in me, so I'm being
How do you
guided
know?
by Him.
How do you know?
Because I know. I
How?
know when He
Okay,
speaks to me.
Chris, do you understand that because I know is not in any way an explanation? It doesn't do anything to explain anything. It doesn't help anybody understand. I could say you're
But do you
wrong.
know
I
that
could
the
say,
Bible-
Chris,
do you
I
know
could,
that
Chris,
the Bible
Chris,
is full of
Chris,
personal testimonies.
I don't.
Well, so is alien abduction.
I am full of personal testimonies, and I could sit here and say that I know that you're wrong. And when you ask, how do I know that? I can just say, I know. And we get nowhere. So how is that remotely a pathway to understanding or truth?
It's like, do you believe on faith or do you believe on evidence?
All right, so that was the clip that got me thinking about this today. There were a few other things that I watched today that proved relevant to this. And I don't know how many of those I want to share. But it got me thinking about it, and so I went ahead and decided to post about it. And then we'll watch a different clip after I read what I wrote today about it. Sorry, I do have a bit of a cold today. I wrote, I admit they are having a personal experience. That's not the thing being questioned. Oh, by the way, hello, Pragmatic Crystal. It's great to see you today.
All right. Also, I want to stop here because I said something about this that I want to share because I shared it in Gather backstage. And I'm not trying to put anybody's neck on the line here. So I'm not speaking for James. I'm not speaking for my one black friend or whatever. I actually don't believe people when they say this to me. I do not think these people have had a personal experience. I really don't. The way and again, I'm not, again, this is my own personal opinion. I'm not asking for my one black friend or James to co-sign on this. What I mean to say is this personal experience is a narrative. And it's a narrative that the person uses as a shield so that you won't challenge their faith. What I mean when I say when they have not had an experience is they have not really heard the voice of God. They do not really believe that they've experienced some kind of miracle. It's a narrative. It's language they use. And the point of comparison I'd like you all to make is, here's what I say. There's a place for people who have had genuine experiences with God. I've been there multiple times. It's called the psychiatric ward. And I mean this almost sincerely. Like, I'm only half kidding. How do you have an experience of God? Like, genuine God came down, you were laying in bed dealing with something, and God spoke to you. And then you got up in the morning and went about your business as normal, right? You were laying, Jesus healed you of some sickness, and then you went about your business as normal. I'm just saying, I just think a lot of us should really think critically and ask tough questions when people say they've had this experience to figure out what exactly they've experienced. Because it seems to me a privileging of their perspective over others. And I really just think these stories, if you got into them, you'd find that. But I agree with James in the sense of when you have these conversations, especially online, especially people you don't know, for the sake of having a meaningful conversation, James is absolutely correct. Just grant that they've had this experience because you're really trying to get at what's the source of the experience and why. But I guess I'm speaking from the perspective of somebody who was a Christian for damn near like 30 years of my life or whatever it was. Mm-hmm. I felt like I never had that experience, right? Like I'm just being honest. Like, did I ever feel good in church? Sure. Did I ever throw all my money in the collection plate because the worship was just that powerful to me, or I was that convicted by the minister's sermon? Yes, multiple times. Did I ever really feel like God made a way for me or I was blessed, sure. But I think when these people say they've had an experience, for most of us, that's supposed to be like a conversation stopper. Like, no, I've experienced the miraculous power of his da-da-da-da-da. And I'm just like, I'm very unimpressed by this claim. But yeah, I'm just adding my 2 cents. I don't really buy people when they tell me they've had these experiences. I think they're mundane, and I think these people at some level realize these are mundane experiences. But yeah, that's just my take on that. I don't know if anyone wants to say anything before I roll the tape.
Well, hold on. I there's something Steve Allen said when he was at sort of a round table some time ago. And I'm going to paraphrase. That's a fairly interesting point of view. Why can't he convince the dummy? I'm happy in situations like that to play the dummy and say, well, let's dive into this. I'm very interested in what you're telling me. It's sort of like I rarely ever see people more fascinated by anything I'm saying than when I talk about when I was in the Caribbean and diabetes had overwhelmed me. I didn't even know I was diabetic and I almost died. I had a near-death experience. The hallucinating and the amazing feeling and all that. People are just riveted to that story. Well, they almost never have questions for me. I do try to be rather descriptive, but they almost never have questions. So when someone is telling me that they spoke to God or God spoke to them or something like that, I ask questions because part of, I guess, my life on this earth, I'm fairly entertained by people and their religions. Not that I want to ridicule them. It's just fascinating to me. And so rather than just sitting there and not knowing, I ask questions because I love being fascinated by what they tell me they believe.
Sure.
And I think if I want to encourage any of you, if you're ever in that situation with a believer who is trying to tell you how wonderful and sweet that God is, or how powerful the message he's trying to communicate to just them is, dive right into that. Because if you want, and I'm not saying you need to do this, somewhere 10 minutes in, when you got all these details, you can ask, how do you know you're not hallucinating? Because if, like, these people who said God told them to kill their children or something like that, when they get to court, that jury can have 12 Christians on it and no takers. None of them are believing.
Right, but that's kind of.
But hold on. There's a freaking story in the Bible where God tells a guy to go kill your kid.
Right.
But the jury won't believe that.
They won't believe it. Yes.
Yeah, the same God.
Yes. They won't believe it.
Clearly without enough to do.
Right.
Is telling yet this woman, hey, you go drown your 2 children in the lake or suffocate them or whatever. There's no way they believe it. They just don't.
That's exactly what I meant when I said the genuine experience puts you in a psych ward, right?
Okay.
Because
and yet the same experience, the same God killed his own kid.
Right. So they just when the rubber meets the road, they don't believe it, right? That's all serious on Sunday morning, but you put them on jury duty Saturday afternoon and they're all convicting this person, right? None of them are buying. And that's kind of what I mean. And even the people who have the experience, that's how serious it would have to be, because otherwise I think if you ask those questions, which I would think is the right thing to do in that situation, I think you'll realize the person will admit that whatever they experienced was a rather mundane phenomenon, because they're not going to want to deal with the consequences of actually being the person that's now hearing from the voice of God. But in a conversational setting, when there's really nothing at stake, I just think people slip easily into this language of personal experience. But let's keep going, because James actually touches on some of what you are saying.
Okay,
there.
Bring it on, James.
It's the interpretation of the experience that's being questioned. Granted, it's possible that a person really is connecting with a not-human super person who lives in some other realm. But that's not actually being challenged here either. The challenge is, how do you know? But further than that, the more important challenge is, why should anyone who isn't you give the claim any weight as evidence that the religion that you want to recruit them into is validated merely by random people's claim of personal experience? To continue, if a god, whatever that is, decided that you were worthy and ready for an experience that most other humans aren't, then that experience should remain private. After all, if billions of others were worthy and ready, then that god, whatever that is, would have gifted them that same type of experience. Allegedly existing he didn't. So we aren't qualified for it.
Stop the tape. James Apperson, please report to the dance floor. Please report to the dance floor. I want to challenge you on this.
You challenge me to a dance off. There we go. There we go. We'll edit that in later.
I'll be right back.
Yeah, James, use that as one of your shorts on YouTube. You have my permission to use it in perpetuity, without further consent needed. You can go for it, or payment. So when we look at the Bible again, and I'm sort of approaching it from the Christian perspective, the Jewish, Hebrew, whatever you want to say, perspective. God doesn't give everyone a revelation. Not everyone gets a prophecy, right? Mm-hmm. So when you read the Bible, certain people are prophets. You get Daniel, the guys who pretended to be Daniel, Jeremiah, the guys who pretended to be Jeremiah, Isaiah, the guys who, and so on, and so on, and so on. Mm-hmm. But you don't find everybody getting one. The Lord isn't speaking to everybody, mm-hmm. right? So we don't find God speaking to Judas, but Judas is one of the characters in a few of the stories. Mm-hmm. So I would submit to you what a cop-out answer I do hear from Christians is that it's not God's way. It's God isn't giving everyone the revelation, or the time of miracles is gone. So surely here and there, God may influence a person, speak directly to that person to get his will executed. But it's not fair for us, we atheists, right? We outsiders, to look at them and think, well, you're all supposed to get this revelation. Mm-hmm. Now, in defense of what you said, using their own book, right? Their set of evidences, mm-hmm. If you're a Christian, the Holy Spirit is supposed to be upon you. You're supposed mm-hmm. to get the Holy Spirit when you become a Christian. So right on, you should know things. You should be tapping into that. So anyway, that's all I have to say. I'd love to hear your take.
I appreciate that. So mm-hmm. there are two different categories or types of these kinds of experiences. There's the kind where Sky Daddy tells an individual to tell everybody else a thing, right? Mm-hmm. You're my I'm tag teaming you in. You're my secretary. Write this shit down, and then go tell everybody else what I said. I would tell them directly, but I got too much shit to do. You do it for me, mm-hmm. and they'll just have to take your word for it. And if they don't, then I'll be really mad at them for some reason. And then there's the other kind where it has nothing to do with go tell other people a thing. It's just they're experiencing, or the story goes that they're experiencing a communion with God. They're having mm-hmm. a divine connection with this God being or whatever, which mm-hmm. it has nothing to do with picking somebody out at random or picking somebody out because they're special in terms of go deliver a message. It's more about you're either tuned into the God channel or you're not. If you are emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, then you're going to have that kind of experience. And if you're not, then you won't. So whatever criteria their theoretical God might use to determine who he decides to tag in as a messenger, it really has it's really a separate domain of consideration than who gets to experience their communion with God. So the idea that Christians generally present is anybody can experience the connection with or communion with God, this indwelling of the Holy Spirit within you. And all you have to do is blah, blah, blah. And then it depends on which sect you ask, right? What do you have to do to qualify? You maybe had to get baptized. Maybe you have to say the prayer a certain way or be a member of a certain sect or have the right kind of doctrines or whatever. You do this, you check off all the boxes, and if your heart's in the right place, if God takes you as sincere and genuine, then you will have that experience. And if you're missing the experience, then something's wrong with you. There's a box that you're not checking. Go check yourself. You might not believe correctly enough, or you might not believe deeply enough, or something's wrong with you. Go back and work on it. And I felt really bad because Mike Jones from Inspiring Philosophy was on Mythvision here about a month or two back, and he talked about how he has not had that experience with God. He hasn't had any experiences with his God. He never got the hug that most Christians claim to have gotten. He never got a hug from Daddy. And when he talked, and he didn't put it that way, but when he talked about how it hadn't happened to him, man, I got to go back and find that clip. You can just see the look on his face. It kind of reminds me of the Simpsons clip where Bart says, "Watch, Lisa, you can tell exactly the moment that you broke Milhouse's heart."
Yeah.
And my heart sank because, okay, on one hand, his religion's bullshit, but oh my gosh, the pain in this man's face for the fact that Daddy never gave him a hug, but has hugged almost every other kid in the room. And I just felt bad for him. I just wanted to give him a hug, despite the fact that his religion's bullshit. Sure. And so it's that kind of a thing. So if somebody tells me that they've had this, it's one thing for someone to come to me and say, the Lord said a thing to me in private, in my head, and I heard his voice, and he wanted me to tell you this thing. And because if that's the case, then my response is, what does God need with the starship? And then I explain what that means.
Yeah.
But if they're coming to me just to say, hey, I had a personal experience, I had this indwelling of the Holy Spirit, and I communed and connected with God, then I'm like, but he didn't tag you in as a messenger. You're telling me something that's completely a subjective experience, and I'll just grant, for the sake of argument, that you really have that experience. I'll even go further, just for the sake of argument, and say, you know what? Yeah, there's a super person in the sky, a super parent, and you really did connect with him. Good for you. But what's that have to do with me, right? Because it wasn't about me when you have that experience, and you're trying to make it about me. And if I'm not qualified, if I don't check off all the boxes to be able to have that kind of experience, then I can't have the experience, right? Within the context of your religious narrative. So if you bring that experience to me and say, hey, you weren't qualified to have it personally and directly, but I want you to believe me that this happened, and I want you to consider it as evidence, basically, that my religion is true. I'm like, and I address this. I don't want to, spoil it because I'm about to talk about this in my stream here that we're covering, but it's a completely different claim, and I'm like, no, it just doesn't work that way. It wouldn't make any sense for a God to want you to tell me about that experience as evidence for your religion. It just wouldn't. So that's where I'm at about it.
The God could very well give you your own. If the God wants you to know, the God can give you your own experience.
So I think part of having,
I think, go ahead, Pocket.
I was just going to say part of having an honest conversation with Christians is that their book has an excuse for everything, and that I would just admit I'm not really interested in that, because that's something I don't think atheists and Christians have honest conversations about. That book has a fucking excuse for everything because it's an apologetics handbook. So we have to be really firm. Like, look, I don't believe the book. And so, but the other thing I was really going to say is that I do think there's this narrative for them. Everybody's got different gifts of the Holy Spirit. Some people are called, I guess, to a more powerful, direct sort of thing. But I think if we're honest about Christianity, the way it's practiced, all Christians say that they have a relationship with Jesus. They all feel the Holy Spirit. They've all got God moving in their heart. And so I think there is a ubiquity with which they would all claim to have these type of experiences, which to me would immediately defeat the issue of only certain people are called to have it, because they're all just going to tell us that they have it. They're in other words, they're all claiming to be one of those people. And then if we were honest as atheists, we'd say, well, then really, it actually seems like it is supposed to happen to everybody. Everybody is supposed to feel the calling of Jesus. Everybody is supposed to have this meeting with Jesus and feel the Holy Spirit in their heart. So maybe that's not to the level of, us leading the tribe of Israel or some kind of crazy calling or sacrificing our child on an altar. But most Christians are going to tell you that they have felt the call of Jesus to do X, Y, and Z, and a lot of them are even going to tell you that they followed it. So I think they're going to give you enough there.
Maybe. I think, I don't know. I find it very funny because there's just so much hypocrisy. There's so much hypocrisy. And the idea that I should become a Christian too and follow the tenets of Christianity too, when the person more than likely proselytizing to me hasn't read the entire Bible. They don't fully understand what they're selling. And so I get it. If I go to a Dodge dealership and let's say I want like one of those Challenger Hellcats, and the salesman, it's his first day and he can't tell me much about that car. He just started working there. But then he says, well, let's talk to my coworker over here. And she's been there 7 years and she sold 50 of those cars. I fully expect her to know. But she invested the time. If there's been somebody there who's worked there that long and they don't sell those cars because they think, oh, it's a gross polluter and that's too much power, I don't want anything to do with putting one of those in the hands of another person, that person may be untrained on that. And that's the Christian I get. They've been a Christian a long time and they don't know jack crap about it other than it's made by Dodge, because every time I ask them for a thorough answer, they dodge me.
No, that's actually great. I agree with that, and we'll touch back on that. I want to get through James's portion of this at least. All right, let's
being withheld from us according to your religion. So since he decided that we aren't qualified for that experience and withheld it from us, it makes no sense that you would attempt to have us experience that vicariously through you. We aren't qualified for it according to your religion. So if the experience, the first-hand experience, wouldn't be transformative for us into that relationship paradigm, into that faith with that God, clearly it wouldn't be, or else he would use it for that, right? Then merely hearing about the experience
can you pause
shouldn't
it,
be
and maybe I should let James finish that sentence. Could you, the sentence that you have playing, could you finish that?
For us either.
Okay.
It is, of course.
Stop. So in your view, James, if we are having this conversation, this interaction with a Christian, and they're leading us down this road, is this, in your opinion, a good time to ask them, well, look, why don't you just pray right now that happens right now? That this whole bus that we're on, or this whole airplane to people, without putting anyone in danger, have that sort of revelation, that we get that sort of connection. What do you think of that?
We can say that, but and I think that most Christians would play along and say, okay, let's pray right now, because they're not going to miss an opportunity to pray with you, because as long as you're indulging in their religious rituals and narrative, right, then it's an opportunity to kind of inch by inch manipulate you into a certain headspace that they're hoping for.
I think I think there's even something more urgent than that you just offered them a way out of this awkward conversation without actually challenging their religion. They love when people do like that, because
Go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Look, you're gonna occasionally get a crazy person, an absolute nut job like Wesley Curry or somebody who will say, I am praying right in this moment for God to give you a revelation within the next 4 days. You're gonna see a chair in your house flip upside down and do it and then when it doesn't happen, you've got an easily defeatable claim. But I just think most Christians, especially if this is somebody you're just having a one-off conversation with, Christians like to pray their way out of awkward conversations. That's all. That's just what I'm thinking here. But I gotta be honest with y'all. We're not really here to pick on Christians today. We're here to pick on atheists today. I'll be honest with you. We're here to pick on atheists today. Yeah, this is all just set up because I want y'all to hear where this goes and why I think we're really. The title of this is James Apperson Destroys Atheism, not James Apperson Destroys Christianity.
First, more trust or faith than you are.
We already know he did that.
Because if someone chooses to believe you, or even if through some other mechanism psychologically they feel compelled to believe you, or they just are simply a very overly trusting, gullible person, in any case, then they are putting their faith in you. Which is exactly what Bibles tell everyone not to do. Do not put your trust in princes and mortal men who cannot save, says the Bible. So then why tell us about it? Jehovah's Witnesses make the same type of claims about their religion. So do Mormons, Catholics, Muslims, Buddhists, Wiccans, etc. They all say I've had this personal experience, so I know my beliefs are true. Meanwhile, every Christian who is personally offended by people who doubt their claims are being hypocritical. They speak as if only us religiously correct people have this exclusive experience. But that's simply not true. People in all religions have descriptively similar and equally profound experiences. Meanwhile, claiming to even be a Christian automatically means that the speaker, the claimer, is rejecting the validity of all such experiences for everyone who isn't a Christian.
All right, now we're going to keep rolling, but I just need y'all to put a pin in that. Even by claiming to be a Christian, hashtag all Christians, right? You are immediately disqualifying the experiences of everybody else, okay? It's really important that we all keep this in mind because part of what is the problem here is we're not looking at Christianity in a way that deals with all Christians, okay? So let's establish a problem that makes it clear that we are addressing all Christianity with this. It's very important.
So if they get to reject and dismiss the claims of all the religions, along with the claims of all so-called Christians who don't meet their personal and narrow definition of what a real Christian is, then they are being hypocritical to even ask people to simply take them at their word, their testimony, their promise, their assurance. Worse yet, to insist by arguing and acting offended and entitled to that trust and respect when they refuse to do the same for people in other religions. Hypocrisy is only a godly trait for religious fundamentalists. Nobody else thinks of it as such. There's no reason anyone should give honor to that attitude or behavior. In fact, it's unethical to enable clinically narcissistic social attitudes and behaviors. Notice.
All right.
So wait.
Go ahead.
James, would you say by me sort of playing along, I'm indulging them? Am I at fault? Because I'm go ahead.
No, I want to hear like the rest of what you.
Oh, okay. Well, when I'm sitting there asking all these questions, because again, I'm going back to Steve Allen quote, why can't he convince the dummy? And I'm sitting there playing the dummy, asking all these questions, like I'm trying to understand what you're telling me, so maybe I can believe it too. Am I wrong to do that? Or because my thinking is I'm being Socratic. I'm eventually trying to show them what you're telling me is absolute nonsense. It's just for some reason you haven't discovered that yet. But
that's fine as a
not how
method.
they feel.
Yeah, that's fine as a method, right? That's fine as a
Okay.
method. I'm fine with it.
Right. This is kind of where I want to jump in and start to talk about today's topic, and I'm so glad James is here. Thank you so much, James. Glad to have my one black friend, everybody here. So I thought about this deeply, and we had an awesome conversation about this stream and gather last night, James. Literally, it's like fucking 4:00 in the morning. Literally, everybody decided they should have been in bed an hour before, but fucking somebody came through. Wayne, I think, talking about James said this is gonna be his last stream. Is James okay? That's what he started with. Is James all right? Is everything okay? And we sitting around chilling, watching HBO. Nigga, what are you talking about, James? What seems to be the problem, right? Like, why are you raising the alarm about James? Why are you performing a wellness check on James right now, right? And he's like, oh, well, he said this is gonna be his last stream and all this. And so we ran over to the channel in a panic, trying to figure out. We paused mid-episode, like, holy shit, what's going on? So it's just kind of funny. I was like, oh, he's making videos. All right, well, that's all right. But all right, so here's the thing. What I don't think a lot of people heard, James, but what I heard in this is actually a challenge to atheists. And it was explaining to me, you did two things. And notice, gang, I'm being very serious. The title of today's stream was James Apperson Destroys Atheism. And I meant that so sincerely because like for me, all right, the way I was thinking about this is there are kind of two things that James accomplished here. The first is he talked about the problematic way in which Christianity is selfish. It's based on this selfish, self-interested personal narrative. But in a way, that is a Christianity that is practiced by damn near every Christian. And the thing that really got me about it is once you now have all of your Christians together in one barrel, he's now flipping it and also reminding you why we can't enable and tolerate this. And that's the part that I heard that is so challenging. In other words, those of us that are giving Christianity a pass, we are enabling this narcissistic, social attitude. We're acting like it's okay, and it gets even deeper. So we should actually keep going from where James was at, because James, you start talking about the sort of like lack of humanism. Is that still before you get to the Sam Harris thing?
I can't remember. We'll find to enable clinically narcissistic social attitudes and behaviors.
In fact,
the quote. It's unethical to enable clinically narcissistic social attitudes and behaviors. Notice I'm not saying that these people are all specifically afflicted with narcissistic personality disorder. I'm simply identifying social attitudes and behaviors that are consistent with that personality disorder. Things that are problematic, things that are socially unequitable, things that are unjust by nature, special privileges and entitlements just because the person feels privileged and entitled. Not okay. Now, this discussion, whether it's written as a post or spoken as a video, like all my other contributions to these issues, are a call to ethically accountable awareness and growth. I am not being angry. I am not being hateful or divisive or mean or unfair. I'm not even being obsessed because I spend less than 40 minutes per week writing about these topics. And then I do maybe 2 live streams per week about various forms of narcissism in our world. It's a legitimate and necessary work as a cause. And we need more people doing it. It's like being an advocate against domestic violence or animal cruelty or pollution, etc. Everyone who raises awareness about various forms of destruction in our world is automatically an advocate for positive change in our world. Irresponsibly selfish people are the ones who say, stay quiet about it. It's not our business to talk about important issues that affect countless innocent lives. Religious fundamentalism is a primary force of life-wrecking destruction in our shared world. That makes it everyone's business.
Boom.
And
All right, hang
everyone's
on.
civic duty to get very informed.
Hang on. Y'all, I gotta roll that back for y'all. This is the call. This call to action right here is so important that we understand it, and it's also critical to the points I'm gonna be trying to make to y'all today. So let's hear this again.
It's like being an advocate against domestic violence or animal cruelty or pollution, etc. Everyone who raises awareness about various forms of destruction in our world is automatically an advocate for positive change in our world. Irresponsibly selfish people are the ones who say, stay quiet about it. It's not our business to talk about important issues that affect countless innocent lives. Religious fundamentalism is a primary force of life-wrecking destruction in our shared world. That makes it everyone's business, and everyone's civic duty to get very informed and at least minimally vocal about it. Silence makes us complicit. Stop treating billions of fellow human brothers and sisters as if they are too slow in the head to understand or too emotionally fragile to hear, learn, and grow.
Are y'all starting to hear the challenge to atheism? Too many of us are too silent about this, okay? And there's something that all of us do that really drives me crazy. It's almost like Christianese. I'm gonna start calling it atheistese or something like that. Here's what you do. You say, I'm really opposed to religion. Yeah, I think it's not true. Yeah, yeah, I spend all day, all week doing counter apologetics and talking about how bad religion is. And then what you do is you put a bunch of qualifiers in front of it. That way it doesn't apply to the people that are close to you. And then when you actually talk to the people that are close to you about religion, you make sure you let them know you only have a problem with religion with all those qualifiers, and then they just don't identify with the qualifier, so they're off the hook. And you go, so I have a problem with the radical, fundamentalist, evangelical forms of Christianity that are weaponized, and they're bigots, and they're tearing down the world, and they're taking all our rights. And all you did was define the person you're talking to out of being the target of your conversation, because they're sitting there going, well, I'm not a radical fundamentalist evangelical, and I don't, right? We got to stop letting people off the hook. It's why when I talk about Christianity now, I just talk about Christianity. Right? I don't qualify it with the conservative or the liberal Christians or because they're all fundamentalist until fundamentalist is a bad word. Put 100 Christians in the room, and how many are going to volunteer and they're going to raise their hand and go, I got to admit, well, I actually don't consider myself a fundamentalist because I don't understand fundamentally my interpretation is actually the wrong one, right? What does it mean to be a fundamentalist? Stop acting like it's some weird thing. It just means that you are serious about the fundamentals of the faith and you ain't playing around.
Well, there's I think there's 5 fundamentals, maybe James knows. And I do think this is a question probably, I don't know, I'm going to give a huge number. Maybe 1 in 10 million Christians can answer that question. What are the Christian fundamentals?
Sure. But they all believe that they have the fundamentally correct version, right? My point is everybody's a fundamentalist till it becomes a bad word.
It's a decided thing what those things are.
Sure.
It's decided. So this is codified what those fundamentals are.
Let's see if we can.
You could Google it.
Let's see if we put.
What are the Christian fundamentals? Most people have no freaking clue. My number may be a bit high, so let's just say 1 in 100,000.
You just keep getting fundamentalism, which is.
Mm-hmm. So I mean, I think it depends on which tradition you ask.
Yeah, for example, absolutely. Yep.
Some would include Trinitarian declarations, and some wouldn't, for example, because some are Unitarian. But like I pulled it up on Google. It says, love God, love your neighbor as yourself, forgive others.
That's not it.
Right, that's not it. So it depends on who you ask.
Yeah, it
the
depends
five
on who you
fundamentals
ask.
of Christianity: biblical inerrancy, nature, nature divine of Jesus, or the divine nature of Jesus Christ, his virgin birth, resurrection, and return.
Yeah,
inerrancy, divinity, birth, resurrection, and return.
And so, yeah.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, I'm pretty sure most Christians can't answer that question for you.
I know, but I don't care about that because that's like a list. Who cares if they know the list? The point,
but that's the core. Okay.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
The seed is Christianity itself, but that is the core.
Yeah, and I think most of them, and I do think most of them believe that core, right? Case. So yeah, that's right. And because I don't want to lose track of what I'm trying to say here. They're all fundamentalists till it's a bad word. They're all evangelical till it's a bad word, right? Mm-hmm. They all either themselves feel responsible for spreading the message of Jesus and getting people into the religion, or they support a church that does, right? Mm-hmm. They're all part of this, from the pew fillers to the top of the pyramid scheme. I mean, if you're just going to say, oh, well, we only have to take out the evangelists and the ministers, look, there's always more people in the pews than in the pulpit. And if you knock out one person in church leadership, they're just going to put somebody else in church leadership. What I really heard in James's stream is a challenge for those of us that have gotten far too comfortable with the sort of soft-pedaled Christianity of most of our friends and family, who we put these qualifiers around that make them not the type of Christians we need to be going after or confronting, when the reality is they all have this sort of personal experience thing going on. They all believe in the fundamental messages of the faith. They all believe in spreading the gospel and sharing the love of Jesus with everybody. Like, we've got to stop letting people off the hook, because if we don't, we might as well just give up now, because everybody's going to be close to it, and they have figured out how to soft pedal their faith. So if you're going to let them get away with soft pedaling it, quit while you're ahead, because you're just not going to go anywhere. What this really reminded me of is when I was in college as an undergrad, I started the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws at the Pennsylvania State University. It's basically like it was like my university's chapter of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, which is like a,
campus crusade for weed.
Campus crusade for pot or whatever, right? I'm trying to think of a C word. Campus crusade for cannabis. Yeah, there you go.
There should be shirts.
Yeah.
There should be shirts.
So the community became of two minds. And I always had to remind my members sort of the origin story of that organization, which was me reading the paper in my dorm room and understanding that there was a federal task force that involved literally 4 or 5 government law enforcement agencies in using Facebook as a sting operation to bust students and, then they would like, they'd lose their financial aid, they'd face all these consequences, they could get kicked out of school. And I was literally in tears over the idea that my school was participating in this war on drugs on campus, that this is what we were doing to our own students. And I remember like what it was like in those days, like when I got together with my crew and smoked, like we were always on the lookout for cops, and cops were after us, and we had these confrontations with cops. I mean, shit was fucking crazy, y'all. And that task force, literally there was a local FBI building, you had the state police, you had the county, you had the actual state college police department, and the university police. No exaggeration. 5 agencies. And they were, you know, doing shit like busting kids and then having them flip on other kids and then like set up deals and shit on Facebook. It was a fucking mess. And so when I started this organization, as crazy as it sounded and as infeasible as it was, the goal was to legalize marijuana and decriminalize marijuana before I graduated as good training for law school. Now, didn't happen. There's probably no way it was gonna happen. But as the organization grew and people, you know, you do your recruitment and you're trying to get involved and stuff like that. A lot of people joined because it was essentially a pot club for them. It was a way to connect with other people who smoked and hang out together and do stuff and kind of have a sense of community amongst stoners. And like, I'm cool with that. I was happy to be a part of that community. I was glad to have those friends and their help and things I did, and that was cool. But I was always having to remind them my mission is to decriminalize marijuana in state college so that students stop getting arrested. And there was a way in which I had to accept that many of the people, even in my own organization, were never going to be able to meaningfully help me with my goal. They helped us in terms of filling our ranks and maybe, you know, help putting posters up, and they helped do what they could do for the community side, the pot club side of the organization. But when it came to rubber meets the road shit, they weren't with me. Why? Because they were too scared. They were too paranoid. Being victims of the war on drugs made them unable to fight back against the war on drugs. They were too scared about being put on police watch list and getting arrested, or wait, you said you're going to invite the chief of police to our meeting. Is he going to, what, am I going to get, what, right? They were so paranoid that they literally were ineffective as change agents. And you just accept that at some point. Like they're just too scared to serve in this capacity. But I had to identify who my like ride or die squad was, who knew what the mission was and was willing to do what it took to get it done. And yeah, it involved putting ourselves in risky fucking positions. I met with the chief of police for State College and the head of the university police department and all the people in government. And yeah, I made myself a very known entity, but I knew them people didn't want, if they wanted me, they would have had me. If they wanted to come after me, they would have been done that. I made myself a very easy target. I was hiding in plain sight. I knew them people didn't want nothing from me. Most of them were really helpful. But I had to have the audacity to let them know what I was about. And, you know, I wrote papers, I proposed law, I did a lot of shit, man, to really push that agenda, working with faculty. Like we accomplished a lot. But that's what it reminds me of a lot in this community. There are some of us that are really just here to find atheist community. And y'all know I'm all about building a community. I love this community. I'm with y'all. I'm with this community literally 24/7. So it's all love. But again, I'm having to remind people I am here to fight against religion. I'm here to stop people believing in God. Like, that's literally what I'm trying to do. And I realized so many atheists in our community are in this fucked up power dynamic with the Christians in their lives. And I really don't think they're in a position to actually fight back against religion. And sometimes what I see going on the internet even is so buddy-buddy with the other side. I'm just like, yo, like, I think a lot of us lose sight of, like, yo, at least for me, y'all, it's like, yo, I'm here to end this shit. I'm tired of this stuff, man. I love y'all. Yes, I'm here to support atheist community and atheists having a place to be together and atheists, you know, just being safer and happier and healthier together. But I'm here to fight this cause, like James is talking about. I'm here to, man, y'all don't know, like, I'm really sick of it. I'm really not okay with, I'm not okay with nobody being a Christian. Nobody. Nobody's Christianity is okay to me. Nobody. Y'all don't understand. I don't give quarter to my own family. My grandmama ain't cool with me because of this. My mama ain't cool with me because of this. I'm not playing. Like, where we are enabling narcissistic, antisocial, social attitudes and behaviors. And we are treating these people like they are too dumb and too emotionally fragile to grow.
And listen to me, I'm sick of it. I'm taking the gloves off.
And so you might as well quit now, because they have figured out how to play stupid and how to play emotionally fragile. And they've deliberately manipulated you into a position where you won't dare come at them. They are emotionally bullying you. You are suffering from compassion poisoning. You feel so bad for them that you can't live your truth. And I gotta be honest, this is where I go to the queer community and to the trans folks. Because they know what it's like to keep it real. They know what it's like to understand that, yeah, I could hide to make you comfortable. I could keep this in. I could present myself in a way that makes you feel safe. But I am going to live my truth. And the consequences will be the consequences. As I often say, you have to go through to get through. You have to get to it to get through it. You have to realize that there's a challenge in front of you. It is going to be difficult. It is going to be uncomfortable. It is going to be require work. But you are the sooner you jump into that work, until that uncomfortableness, the sooner you will find yourself putting yourself back together on the other side of it. And a lot of us are in this cycle of perpetual procrastination. And that's exactly what the Christians in your life want. They are here to ride out the clock. When they realize, okay, this person I can't really go too hard at, they immediately go for the soft sell, and now it is time to ride out the clock. As long as you don't push on them, they won't push on you, and then they are just planning on this stalemate until you are putting them in the grave. And what you're basically doing is the same thing Black people were told for generations, the same thing queer people were told for generations. Things will get better for atheists eventually. Atheism will become normalized eventually. Someday, you might see more atheists in elected positions. Someday, we might have a non-believer in the White House, but probably not in your lifetime. I'm not with that bullshit. And I gotta be honest with you, I don't even buy it. Look at Barack Obama is the perfect example. It's one of the reasons I believe that Donald Trump's ass is gonna get arrested and he's gonna get in all sorts of trouble. Everything's unprecedented until it fucking happens, right? Like, they arrest Donald Trump. It don't have to be Tuesday. It could be Wednesday. It could be 17 months from now. Mm-hmm. But there's a first time for everything. People were literally saying that they were never going to live to see a black president the day before they voted for one. My grandparents were talking about how they were never really going to elect a black man president. Literally, as they were going to the polls, they didn't believe it was possible. And wouldn't you know, they found out a lot of people voted just like they did, and they went from that is not possible to that is actually the reality overnight. I do not want to waste the rest of my life living in what amounts to a Christian theocracy, because that's exactly what I feel like the situation I live in now. I just have two flavors of it. I have the super extreme KKK, in hiding, Trumpleton right-wingers, and I've got the white hoods and blue suits over on the Democratic Party who love and worship Jesus just as hard as the other team. Okay, they're just the soft sell. I got the carrot on one side, stick on the other. I'm stuck literally between a rock and a hard place. So I'm not with it. I don't want to die in a world, and this is part of the reason I be telling people to understand, but a lot of times when I be talking to my advisor, I'll be like, look, we need to seriously consider me getting a job in another country. I don't want to spend the rest of my life like this. So, like, for me, the time to stop being a Christian is yesterday. And I'm really, really sorry that there are some lovely people in your friend group and your family who are going to be otherwise affected by the Great Awakening, but too bad. That is their problem. And they are not too stupid or too emotionally fragile to be made aware that they have a problem. I'm going to let y'all get in here before we get back to this tape.
Well, everybody's got their own take on things, and of course, I'm a big proponent of people being able to enjoy their opinions. So, obviously, I like the fact that there's a diversity out there of opinions, and I also like the fact that people can be open enough to have their minds changed. I think it's no secret to our viewers that I don't think Christianity is the way. It's got some good ideas. Judaism's got some good ideas. I've heard several Muslim people I've spoken with share ideas from Islam with me that I thought were good ideas. But ultimately, these systems aren't for everybody. And the same is true with our atheism. It's not for everybody either. Some people can't take the idea. They can't accept the idea that there probably isn't a God. Right? They can't take it. And I think that's part of the reason why we see such diversity of opinion in what gods are and what gods do and how many there are and why they're active or why they're not, why they love, why they hate. And because it's as diverse as the believers themselves.
This makes sense.
Frank Turek would agree. So that's all I got to say about that. Mr. Apperson, your thoughts?
So, in a very general sort of way, I agree with you. But if we get into the specifics, there's a limit to my tolerance for things being said and done in our world in the name of religion, for religious expression. So it's Karl Popper's tolerance of paradox, or tolerance paradox, or paradox of tolerance. Yeah. So it's, if we're tolerant to the extent that we tolerate the intolerant, then tolerance will disappear, and the tolerant along with it. We have to set a boundary. We have to say, okay, think what you want, feel what you want, live how you want, speak as you will, but only to the extent that it doesn't hurt anybody else, right? If you want to bash your face against a brick wall, there's no shortage of them. Go find one, right? But you can't bash somebody else's face against that brick wall, right? So, if we were to take Christianity in its most common form, in its traditional forms, and just draw a line through all the things, or a Bible, draw a line through all the things that are destructive, that are toxic, that are abusive, that are antithetical to the interests of humans, that are a threat to the continued existence of humanity, that destroy families, that destroy lives, there ain't going to be a whole lot left other than some stuff that just doesn't matter, or stuff we agree with. Basically, it's just secular ideas under a religious label. That's all it is. The good stuff. That's all the good stuff is. So, am I okay with people thinking what they want to think? Sure. I don't even care if there's people out there that are racist. My problem is when they bring that into the social sphere, when they bring that into the lived experience of other people, when they encourage racism and ignorance in society, when they encourage and sow seeds,
and there's no way they
destruction.
Sorry, go ahead, James.
Yeah, I mean, they're obligated to it by their religion. They're obligated to say things that they shouldn't, that are going to hurt people, and they're obligated to promote ignorance in the name of knowledge. They're obligated to promote division in the name of harmony. They're obligated to promote hate in the name of love. It's very Orwellian, the relationship that they have with language, and the relationship, or the ideas that they want society to emulate. And it's like, that's when it becomes a problem. I don't care if somebody worships dryer lint, but the moment dryer lint starts telling them that they need to hijack our government and hijack our education systems and sow hatred and ignorance about LGBT peoples and atheists and things like that, then I've got a problem with it, right? So, if they keep that shit to themselves, we ain't got a problem. But Bibles tell everybody, don't you dare keep this bullshit to yourself, right? And then that's where the problem really comes from. Because, go ahead.
Well, I think the problem is, James, people do misinterpret the Bible, and when it says, as a Christian, you're to seek and save the lost, it doesn't say you're supposed to rule over them. It doesn't say you're supposed to beat them down. It doesn't say you're supposed to take away their rights. And this is a book where we had a discussion recently about whether or not the Bible condemns homosexuality. And I'm unflinching in this. I say it does. And this is a book where they will have you killed for picking up sticks on a Saturday.
Right.
Can I just had to say something real quick about that.
Well, hold on.
Go ahead.
I do not think it offers a lot of freedom to a lot of people in that respect. I think what it's trying to do is provide community rules. And if you're outside of the community, meaning not geographically outside of the community, but if we are not Christians, if we are not churchgoers, they are not supposed to decide how we should live our lives. It's not up to them to make those decisions. The Romans, I forget, it's 9 or 13, where it talks about how people should obey elected officials because God put them there. Whether you like what they say or not, God put that person there. So just follow what they say, and it may change in the future. But for now, this is what God is decreeing, because God is what? controlling the whole process. Not enough Christians in this nation embrace that idea. It's right there in the book that they don't read, right? Mm-hmm. It's right there with all the other skippable stuff that's in the Bible. Mm-hmm. So, okay, Pocket Locker, please.
All I was just going to say is in 2023, what you said, the fact that the Bible is unambiguously anti-homosexual is enough reason to stop being a Christian. We are enabling people. We are making excuses for people who continue to belong to a hate group.
But the same book, okay, here's me defending Christianity again.
Stop. I don't know. Why do you do this to yourself?
It's a normal Sunday. So the same book says, you will know that we are Christians by our love. The same book says, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. The same book says you're supposed to take care of people who come to your country from foreign countries. The same book says that you are supposed to feed the starving. The same book says you're supposed to look after widows. The same book says you're supposed to take care of orphan children. That's all in the same book.
So obviously it wasn't written by God because it clearly contradicts itself.
Well, what happens is, I think a sociologist would be a fascinating addition to this conversation, but over time, the needs of the society changed. I'll submit this, and I'm against. I think most scholars would disagree. A lot of the Bible that they say took place in Egypt was in Babylon, and the only reason they call it Egypt is because of Hagar, because Hagar was from Egypt, and the daughter for her son Ishmael, which is why he was supposed to produce all his children too, will become a great nation. Yeah, they became Babylon. And that's why they say it's Egypt, because his children were essentially more Egyptian than not. But they went to live somewhere else, not in Egypt, not in the country of Egypt, the landmass. So a lot of these rules kept evolving as their needs changed. When they went back to Jerusalem, most of them, not all of them, when they went back to Jerusalem, their needs changed as a community, because you had the Hebrews that stayed there in Jerusalem and the ones that went off to Babylon, and the descendants of each of them being sort of united back in Jerusalem when a bunch of them came back from Babylon. Well, both evolved some. And eventually you get Christianity, which is trying to get all these outsiders who might take your point of view, Jay. When I read this Old Testament, these things are barbaric. Even Marcion couldn't believe that the God of the Old Testament was the Father of Jesus Christ.
The New Testament is just as barbaric.
Who is supposed to be such a lovely person. Look, the New Testament doesn't ask Christians to kill people who are not Christian. The Old Testament does. If you find somebody you come to a town and they worship a different God, you're supposed to kill everybody in the town.
The gospel is unethical. Like, there's no, if any Christian tells me they believe that Jesus' death and resurrection saves them, like, I think I'm talking to a terrible person. Christianity is a character test, and if you're a Christian, you failed it. I'm sorry, like, vicarious redemption is immoral. Human sacrifice is immoral. Crucifixion is immoral. The crucifixion of an innocent person is unconscionable. I'm just realizing, like, myself, like, I'm just on some different stuff, man. I'm on a different page than most people in my own community. I just feel like a lot of people want to criticize Christianity from the sidelines, and the easiest way to do that is to give all the Christians in your life a pass because they're not the problematic Christians. But look, at its core, the damn thing is problematic. And I'm sorry, all of the Christians that we're giving passes to, their hands are covered in blood, right? The best Christian, the most progressive Christian I can imagine, in their heart of hearts, actually believes most of the time something along the lines of homosexuality isn't really the way God intends for us to be, but they're called to love our LGBT fam anyway. Disgusting. Get out of my house. You know, they really believe women are just as good as men, but, you know, as a man of God, they're called to be the head of the household. You can kind of get out of my house right now because I'm feeling a bit gross and creeped out by you, right? Like there's just no, like even atheism, right? They think atheists are good to go, but in the end, God is gonna judge everybody. They certainly know, you know, they're gonna, oh man, they can't wait to that day where they're called on up to meet sweet, sweet Jesus, and boy, they really wouldn't want to be an atheist on that day, right? Like, I mean, and so it's just, come on, man. I know that's not where everybody is, but that's where I'm at, man.
What the Bible doesn't call on Christians to do the murdering. It says that when Jesus comes back in Revelation, well, actually, some of the Gospels do note this. This is why I say Revelation, in my opinion, came before the Gospels. Because it's between Revelation and Enoch and some of the other prophets, it's their playbook. And I just think Jesus and his friends were LARPing. That's all, just doing live action role play. Maybe it was a grift entirely. Maybe it was sincere and they were just doing live action role play. But the killing is in Revelation, where it talks about Jesus and his horsemen are going to come back and they're going to take up the righteous people, you know, the Christians, and slaughter everybody else who isn't basically a believer in Jesus. They're going to make us suffer, and then they're going to throw us in holes in the desert and make us suffer even more. Really, guys?
It's a serious, it's a mess. All right, I'm gonna let James roll for a little bit because he gets to some stuff I want to get us to, and then we'll jump over to the Sam Harris piece.
Into accountable, mutually respectful, equitable adults. They are capable of far more than their enablers give them credit for. So that's what I wrote about that. And to continue, there's another video. Play this clip too. I rather hate how YouTube automatically starts these shorts when I open the page.
Stacy, it's so good to see you here. Stacy said, my dad in the heat of anger said he would be laughing when I burn in hell one day. Now, I appreciate the love from the chat. A lot of the people in the chat said they realized I'm in a different place than a lot of people in the community. I appreciate that because that's how I feel.
What that reminds me of is something I've said before. If you really want to hear what somebody really thinks, either get them drunk or get them angry. Then they'll tell you what they really think.
That's true. It's true. Yeah, including people I love, because I've been so mad at people, and I'll like break down and cry. I don't know why we're fighting. It's just, you know, yeah, one way or another, you're gonna figure it out. But look, here's what I want to say about that. A lot of us are comfortable because we have Christians in our lives who won't say stuff like that to us. I'm gonna be honest with you. I think he was being honest because I think a lot of Christians believe that. And I think when they hear that rhetoric on Sunday, they don't push back on it. But what really bothers me is I think a lot of them are, I don't know if guilty by association or whatever it is. It's like they know that this is happening. They know that there's this understanding that everybody has with regard to things like hell and the certainty with which non-believers will be there. And again, I just think they're lying on the book. They're lying on the book. The book just says it so clearly. And so I'm gonna let us keep going. James, you're gonna get to it. James is gonna get to it. I promise y'all, James is gonna get to where we're going.
That screen and add the other screen in. Share screen. Neil deGrasse Tyson. controversial figure, but I happen to like him.
Oh, I think maybe this is where we get to
Meantime, let's talk for a moment and give a shout out to, drum roll please,
shout out to the scientists
YouTube
out
Punk
here in the building.
0125AR, and it just occurred to me I don't actually know what that's in reference to. 0125AR. I kind of want to know the backstory on that AR. And Nitty, we love us some Nitty. Tell me your tusties, Nitty. Fuck me. And who else we got here? YouTube Punk. Tux TV, hi there. And more Nitty says good morning to Tux TV, Melody, and Pragmatic Crystal, and the rest of the gang. Thanks for all the likes last night, says Nitty. And Per Aspera.
This is a good stream. I'm really excited we did this.
Complex.
Let's keep going.
And can be interpreted through the lens of naturalism or superstition. Sure. Absolutely. An
you're welcome.
Anti-social media says, good morning, James. Love the topic. We'll be listening in the background.
What's up, Wayne?
Yeah, YouTube Punk also wants to know the backstory for that AR. So to continue for a moment, what does Neil deGrasse Tyson have to say that I'm claiming is relevant to this discussion?
Also, Wayne, we're live. I don't know if you knew that.
Gods that have ever been worshipped
to change my status.
But if you're thinking God as an all-powerful being that created the universe and is looking after
I get
you,
it. I mean,
what is your
don't even
evidence? There are many pious people out there who are stricken with cancer. 30,000 people die in car accidents every year. In 1755, Lisbon, Portugal, one of the holiest cities in Europe, on All Saints' Day, in the morning, where most people are in church, an earthquake struck, killing 10,000 people outright. And after the earthquake, a tsunami followed, killing another 50,000 people. 70,000 people were wiped clean off the slate. So if you want to say your God looks after you, there's strong evidence against that. If looking after you means that God is interested in your health or your longevity. If you want to remove health and longevity from the equation, you can say they look after you in life and in death, well then go ahead. And God will kill 80,000 people in the morning who are all worshiping. That's God's will. If anything that happens is fair enough for God, that's fine. But then you're not offering me a test for the non-existence of your God. You have to remove the methods and tools of science from your belief system. They're rolling pages of all the gods that have ever been worshipped in the history of.
So that's what Neil has to say about it. So, yeah, I mean, it really helps put the whole matter into perspective. Hello, Cameron Bennett, and Dirty Rodent, and Pragmatic says the motto of Kansas, ad astra per aspera, is Latin for to the stars through difficulties. That's interesting. I would love to hear the backstory on that.
Nice.
Ad astra. For what it means to you personally, how it's relevant to your journey.
I don't know if Per's in the chat today, but that's
Look out for number one, says a YouTube girl called Sierra, a self-confessed narcissist Christian. She has 2 discussions with King Xerxes. I have said that I will review her videos, and she's accusing me of harassment.
Where's Xerxes?
I don't know. Some people just feel that way.
I was going to say, Xerxes is supposedly having a hard time, but I don't care.
But if she's
she's
a self-confessed narcissist,
don't believe him, don't care.
I think we probably should expect that their idea of boundaries is going to be different than ours. And when somebody responds that way, like, hey, I feel harassed, at that point, it doesn't really matter if they're being reasonable with why they feel harassed. Even if reasonably they shouldn't feel harassed, really all that we can do with that, looking out for number one, is to just step back from that and then just give that person lots and lots of personal space, right? So much that they never hear from us. Like, we just do our thing. If somebody feels harassed just because we've shared and discussed a video or something else they put out on YouTube, then that's on them. Let them feel harassed. Don't care, right?
Yeah.
I didn't care when Rebecca from Bread of Life felt personally attacked that I wrote some things that were critical of her religion. That, I wasn't trying to attack her personally.
It's always a personal attack, though.
But at the end of the day,
hey, Mikey,
when you put something out there in the interwebs publicly, you're releasing it. This is why we use that word, releasing it. You're releasing it into the wild. And you're taking the chances that things might not go the way you want them to when people grab sound bites or
beautiful
videos
baby,
or
Mikey.
entire blogs and offer their own commentary about it online. You have to expect that that's a vulnerability that you're signing up for. And if she didn't understand that, if the Sierra didn't understand that, then she soon will looking out for number one. She soon will, or look out for number one, sorry. She soon will understand it. You do you. AR says, no reference, just a number I picked up years ago for my first username. I guess now a lucky number plus my initials AR. Yeah, that's fair enough. And scrolling down real quick. Yes, as Nitty says, if you make content, I'm sorry, you are putting your voice out to the public.
Oh,
Thomas
yes,
Clark,
you
great
are.
to see, says it ties into a persecution complex. Yes, I agree that it does tie into it. Nitty says, no, James, about something. I'm not sure which thing I said that he said no to. But whatever it is, I probably had it coming. My darkened understanding, hello, Sean, says Xerxes. Xerox is apparently homeless, so no one has...
So one less shit heel on the YouTubes.
So no...
He meant Xerox.
So one less shit
he meant Xerxes.
Well, I don't really... I've never interacted with them. I've heard bad things, but
Yeah, Xerxes is an asshole.
Anything specific. But I hear you. I hear you on that one. On the other hand, you are fine responding to and criticizing. Exactly. Yep. That's all you can do. So give them personal space. Like, don't go after them personally. Like, don't say anything directly to them if they feel harassed. But feel free to like tear their shit apart. Right? Feel free to. And sometimes people
I don't
put
send
my shit
Rebecca
on blast
mean
too.
letters. I just
sometimes fairly and
make fun of her on
fairly,
YouTube.
But, you know, that's part of the game. That's part of what happens in the arena. So all we can do. It's just these are just my thoughts about it. So to continue, I'm going to share one more thing. Stopping that screen real quick.
All right.
Share screen.
It's about to get good.
No, share it as a tab.
Well, it's about to get even better. It's always been good, but this is for our purposes today. We're getting
it is not only tiresome
into our focus.
When otherwise intelligent people speak this way, it is morally reprehensible. This kind of faith really is the perfection of narcissism. God loves me, don't you know? He cured me of my eczema. He makes me feel so good while singing in church. And just when we had given up hope, he found a banker who is willing to reduce my mother's mortgage. Given all that this God of yours does not accomplish in the lives of others, given the misery that is being imposed on some helpless child at this instant, this kind of faith is obscene. To think this way is to fail to reason honestly or to care sufficiently in the suffering of other human beings. So that really, really just goes right to the heart of the matter. Key, absolutely core and heart to the proclamation that religious fundamentalists are making is selfish, entitled specialness, right?
And I just want to say this is one of those cases where the only thing I have to where I push back on what James is saying is they're all doing this. And I think this is just a habit. It's a speech habit, right? A lot of us are just accustomed to speaking out against religious fundamentalists, where I'm trying to reshape my habit into speaking out against religion more broadly. And this is really problematic for me. This is the thing that I think even the softest of Christians is guilty of. This willingness to overlook everything going on in the world because they need to feel special. They get to I have to be honest with you. I have never in my life met a Christian who's not guilty of this. I have never met a Christian in my life who is not hanging on to this sense of specialness and purpose and eternity and all of this that is quite frankly obscenely childish. It is obscenely childish to think that you will live forever with absolutely no reason and evidence of that. Are you serious? I mean, gang, talk about gaslighting. I mean, we are talking about the most inescapable actual factuals in reality. everybody dies. Oh, wait, no, not sure. I mean, this is just this is the desire to remain in a childlike state forever, and to impose that childlike state on everyone in the adult world around you. It is a disgusting sense of entitlement. And Stacey, yeah, I totally agree. And one of the things that even like the Stacey story made me think about is Christians have to, sure, it's easy to point at dad and say that's mean. You shouldn't say that. That's dad being a bad Christian. But again, that is the culture that they're all indoctrinated into. And even the ones who don't think that, who would never say that, they believe it anyway. And if they have a problem with it, they don't have enough of a problem with it to say or do anything about it. In other words, their selfish desire to be special and have hope, meaning, and purpose is so strong that they are willing to overlook the harm, damage, and abusive stuff like that done in the name of Christianity by other Christians. And that is why it, to me, is so important that we as atheists do not do the same thing. Look, there are plenty of Christians in the life of Christians that will make it safe for them to be Christians. You, as an atheist, do not need to volunteer yourself. The other thing is you have to remember how precious we are. Think about our LGBTQ fam, and how many of them had to come out in family or social situations in churches, whatever it may have been, where they were damn near, or if not, the only one, right? The only gay person in the family, the only openly gay person in the church, the only trans person in their entire school. The only one. Now, think of all the ridicule and torment and how unbelievably hard that must have been. Constantly being told they were impossible. But they did it anyway. And now think of how many people, through turmoil and difficulty, and I'm sure hard times, have now come to accept that person, to love that person, to embrace that person. And now beyond that, it has actually transformed how they see the issue. Oh, no. I think about LGBTQ issues because I have a gay son, right? I think about the queer community differently because, I have a trans coworker. My captain of my volleyball team was like all of these are game changers. That's what I dealt with, being the only black kid in the entire school multiple times. It is not easy, but you have to do it anyway. And what happens is if you don't, who will? If I wasn't there, literally, those would have been all white schools. And there's students who literally would be on the internet talking about something. Yeah, I went to school with zero diversity, racially.
That's a lot of weight you're putting on yourself, bro.
I'm here to tell you, it's exhausting.
On yourself. That's a lot of weight.
It is. It's so much weight in addition to the burden you're already dealing with. But what I'm really getting at is if you don't do it in these people's lives, who will? You are counting on them serendipitously at some other time in their life encountering another atheist that they have more of a connection with and more of a social motivation to take seriously. And number two is somehow better equipped to deal with this person than you are. You are praying for a miracle. The reality, and I'm going to say 95+% of these situations, off rip, easy, I will bet my paycheck, is that you are, if not the only atheist that this person knows, you are certainly the atheist closest to them, that they care about the most. And on top of that, you are probably the most prepared atheist to deal with the issues than any of the other non-believers in their life. And when you put those two things together, if you are not willing to get in there with them, then who will be?
So if you survive a train wreck or derailment or some other like unexpected and horrific event, a natural disaster, a human disaster, whatever, disease, like if you survive it, if you get cured, if you go into remission, if you manage not to get afflicted by something else everyone around you got afflicted with, then the fundamentalist mind will say, oh wow, look how special I am. The Lord has chosen that I am so worthy I will be spared. He loves me so much. Now, that's the thing. If the Lord loves you so much that's why you walked away, that's why you're healthy, that's why you're still standing when other people around you aren't, then you are automatically saying not only that you know that there's a God, you know the mind of God in order to speak for him and say, he personally did this for me because he loves me. And you're automatically saying that the reason he didn't do it for someone else is he doesn't love them so much. You're automatically saying that. You can't get away from that. So they get so focused on how things affect them, their own selfish narrative, their own selfish benefits, that it greatly diminishes how much compassion they have for other people. I don't know why God didn't find you worthy to be spared this horrific thing, but he found me worthy, bitches. Isn't that great?
I love that.
Gnostic conforming. So this was my
I'd like to thank my Lord and Savior for helping me win this football game.
Right. But he's too busy to show up for this other stuff. That's oh man, James is a really good point. It was really funny.
Right. Selfishness and addiction. It is very much
Wait.
that.
I can't hear my one black friend. He's saying something.
Oh, I think he's still muted. My one black friend. We can't hear him.
James, I will gladly pay $30 for the T-shirt that says what you just said. Our Lord and Savior saved you, bitches, or whatever your quote was. Just tell me where to send the money. I wish I only needed an extra large, but I need a triple extra large. I'll gladly pay.
Fair.
And though an atheist, I'll wear that when I travel.
Nice. Very nice.
So I wanna follow up with this Sam Harris. It's a brief essay that he wrote. I think this is really good. I looked this up and sort of for him to elaborate his point here. And this is kind of where I've been feeling lately. Like this whole there is no God. And then most important and you know it. That's the part that's really changed the way I see this. All right, so somewhere in the world, he wrote this back in 2005. Somewhere in the world, a man has abducted a little girl. Soon he will rape, torture, and kill her. If an atrocity of this kind not occurring at if an atrocity of this kind is not occurring at precisely this moment, it will happen in a few hours or days at most. Such is the confidence we can draw from the statistical laws that govern the lives of 6 billion human beings. The same statistics also suggest that this girl's parents believe at this very moment that an all-powerful and all-loving God is watching over them and their family. Are they right to believe this? Is it good that they believe this? No. The entirety of atheism is contained in this response. Atheism is not a philosophy. It is not even a view of the world. It is simply a refusal to deny the obvious. Unfortunately, we live in a world in which the obvious is overlooked as a matter of principle. The obvious must be observed and reobserved and argued for. This is a thankless job. It carries with it an aura of petulance, of insensitivity. It is, moreover, a job that the atheist does not want. It is worth noting that no one ever need identify themselves as a non-astrologer or a non-alchemist. Consequently, we do not have words for people who deny the validity of these pseudo-disciplines. Likewise, atheism is a term that should not even exist. Atheism is nothing more than the noises reasonable people make when in the presence of religious dogma. The atheist is merely a person who believes that the 260 million Americans, 87% of the population, who claim to, quote, never doubt the existence of God, should be obliged to present evidence for his existence and indeed for his benevolence, given the relentless destruction of innocent human beings we witness in the world each day. Only the atheist appreciates just how uncanny our situation is. Most of us believe in a God that is every bit as specious as the gods of Mount Olympus. No person, whatever his or her qualifications, can seek public office in the United States without pretending to be certain that such a God exists. And much of what passes for public policy in our country conforms to religious taboos and superstitions appropriate to a medieval theocracy. Our circumstance is abject, indefensible, and terrifying. It would be hilarious if the stakes were not so high. Consider the city of New Orleans was recently destroyed by Hurricane Katrina. At least 1,000 people died, tens of thousands lost all their earthly possessions, and over 1 million have been displaced. It is safe to say that almost every person living in New Orleans at the moment Katrina struck believed in an omnipotent, omniscient, and compassionate God. But what was God doing while a hurricane laid waste to their city? Surely he heard the prayers of those elderly men and women who fled the rising waters for the safety of their attics, only to be slowly drowned there. These were people of faith. These were good men and women who had prayed throughout their lives. Only the atheist has the courage to admit the obvious. These poor people spent their lives in the company of an imaginary friend. Of course, there had been ample warning that a storm, quote, of biblical proportions would strike New Orleans, and the human response to the ensuing disaster was tragically inept. But it was inept only by the light of science. Advance warning of Katrina's path was wrested from mute nature by meteorological calculations and satellite imagery. God told no one of his plans. Had the residents of New Orleans been content to rely on the beneficence of the Lord, they wouldn't have known that a killer hurricane was bearing down upon them until they felt the first gust of wind on their faces. And yet, a poll conducted by the Washington Post found that 80% of Katrina's survivors claim that the event has only strengthened their faith in God. Oh my goodness. As Hurricane Katrina was devouring New Orleans, nearly 1,000 Shiite pilgrims were trampled to death on a bridge in Iraq. There can be no doubt that these pilgrims believed mightily in the God of the Quran. Indeed, their lives were organized around the indisputable fact of his existence. Their women walked veiled before him. Their men regularly murdered one another over rival interpretations of his word. It would be remarkable if a single survivor of this tragedy lost his faith. More likely, the survivors imagined that they were spared through God's grace. Only the atheist recognizes the boundless narcissism and self-deceit of the saved. Only the atheist realizes how morally objectionable it is for survivors of a catastrophe to believe themselves spared by a loving God, while the same God drowned infants in their cribs. Because he refuses to cloak the reality of the world's suffering in a cloying fantasy of eternal life, the atheist feels in his bones just how precious life is, and indeed how unfortunate it is that millions of human beings suffer the most harrowing abridgments of their happiness for no good reason at all. Of course, people of faith regularly assure one another that God is not responsible for human suffering. But how else can we understand the claim that God is both omniscient and omnipotent? There is no other way And it is time for sane human beings to own up to this. This is the age-old problem of theodicy, of course, and we should consider it solved. If God exists, he either can do nothing to stop most egregious calamities, or he does not care to. God, therefore, is either impotent or evil. Pious readers will now execute the following pirouette, yeah. God cannot be judged by merely human standards of morality. But of course, human standards of morality are precisely what the faithful use to establish God's goodness in the first place. And any God who could concern himself with something as trivial as gay marriage or the name by which he is addressed in prayer is not as inscrutable as all that. If he exists, the God of Abraham is not merely unworthy of the immensity of creation, he is unworthy even of man. There's another possibility, of course, and it is both the most reasonable and least odious. The biblical God is a fiction. As Richard Dawkins has observed, we are all atheists with respect to Zeus and Thor. Only the atheist has realized that the biblical God is no different. Consequently, only the atheist is compassionate enough to take the profundity of the world's suffering at face value. It is terrible that we all die and lose everything we love. It is doubly terrible that so many human beings suffer needlessly while alive, that so much of this suffering can be directly attributed to religion. The religious hatreds, religious wars, religious delusions, and religious diversions of scarce resources is what makes atheism a moral and intellectual necessity. It is a necessity, however, that places the atheist at the margins of society. The atheist, by merely being in touch with reality, appears shamefully out of touch with the fantasy life of his neighbors. All right. And yeah, that's kind of where I wanted us to get to, because to me, a lot of this, for me, is really changing up and having a different conversation, where the issue is a much more moral one, where we're willing to come face to face with the fact that, you know, to me, Christianity is immoral. All the Abrahamic faiths are immoral. And I do think a lot of us need to think through where we're at in our lives. And I don't fault anybody for being in either space. Just like I eventually learned that I had to accept the paranoia of the members of my marijuana club. It was sad. It was sad. I actually thought some of the most meaningful experiences I had in college came in those situations where I was able to have students and police officers sit down together in the same room and talk to each other. Certainly, in terms of my professional development, the meetings I had with police and different people throughout the system was incredibly important to me. But I couldn't force other people to be comfortable with that, right? So I had to, go it alone in a lot of those situations. But I do think if people are not only serious about leaving behind religion, but also creating a better world for atheists, making it more normal, more socially accepted to be an atheist, I really do think we have to start with being more honest with ourselves and more honest with the people in our lives. And I use, in this sense, your participation in this community as a motivating factor. A lot of the challenging conversations I had with my mom were prompted by things that were going on in this community that I wanted to talk about. That gave me an in, because it allowed me to realize this is what's important to me. These are the people that are important to me. These are the issues that are important to me. So I think for a lot of people, if you were a believer and you're not a believer anymore and you just move on with your life, then cool, you probably don't want to talk about it. It's probably not that, maybe it's not that important to you. I don't know. Maybe it's not that important to you, or you just haven't dealt with it or whatever. But to me, if you're in this community, and a lot of us know what I'm talking about, that means you are in these kind of streams and watching videos on YouTube. Like, atheism is a passion of yours. You're in this community really having these conversations literally like every day. As I like to joke, even Christians only talk about Jesus on Sundays, right? but us, we're really talking about this stuff every day. So to me, that's enough for you to realize this is important to you. It's an important part of who you are. Your quote unquote real friends, that being us out here in this community, we certainly know and accept your atheism. And I do think that for a lot of us, that's reason enough to say this is important to me. And if it's safe for me to talk about it, maybe I would consider doing so. But yeah, I want to hear from you guys, and I know we're kind of gone long today, but we've had a lot of viewers. We've had like 30 people here at one point. Really appreciate you guys.
All right. I go ahead, James.
So, I mean, there's been so much with discussions like this. There's always so many rabbit holes you have to walk right past in order to stay on topic, right? And see, there's this urge, like let's branch off in this direction. We're like, no, because that takes us away from the core focus, So, do I have more to say? Oh, hell yeah! But do I want to pull us off topic? Nah. Right. So, I don't even know. Like, I got 100 things I want to say, and I just don't know that I want to go down those rabbit holes today. But when people are having, just to keep it on topic, when people are having important discussions with their friends and their family and things like that, I get why it's important. I do. But at the same time, I don't want responsibility for somebody saying, oh, well, James, made me feel like now's the time and I've got to be bold and courageous. Right. And then they go, but maybe they don't bring enough finesse or diplomacy or tact, or maybe maybe their timing was bad or something. Right. They didn't read the room first or whatever, and then it explodes in their face and they're like, I got to quit listening to James. I just got to quit listening to James. Like, I don't want the responsibility. So
sure.
This is, and I'm sure there already is a book like this, but I would love to write a book of my own about how I think the conversation is best had, like what method I would use. Yeah. Because there is a certain, I call it the James method. Like, there's a certain way that I go about having those discussions that are different than I think most people have them.
Sure.
But there's no guaranteed result from this. No matter how you say it, even if you use the James method, you can still blow up in your face, right? And then you have to be prepared for those consequences. And if you're not, then maybe now's not the right time. Maybe you've got some growing to do first. Maybe you've got to get stronger and more durable and in a better position in your life where you can take the hit, right? And that may involve building your own social systems that you can fall back on, so that you're not completely left without anybody in the world in case you accidentally burn these bridges. Because sometimes all it takes is a spark. There's enough fuel on that bridge, and the whole damn thing's going to go up in flames. So, I don't want to present it as an absolute do it now, get in their face about it kind of a thing.
Right.
So it just depends on where you're at. Now, for me personally, I wish I had family to come out to all over again, because I'd be even more bold and obnoxious about it than I was last time.
Right.
That's just me.
Yeah. So
wow.
The thing you made me think about, James, is I'm fine with that responsibility. I really am, because I've thought about it so much and I've dealt with it so much, and I can tell you, I can honestly say that was the source of suffering for me. And I would love a book like that, because it's up the alley of my interest. So I would read it to resonate with it or see what I took from it, right? But there's a way in which I would recommend for people in the community. I'd say don't read it. And I'd say one of the things that I really think is a problem in our community is we shit on Christians for using tactics, but then we flip around ourselves and we obsess over tactics. Should you use the Socratic method? Do you just tell them they're sitting on some bullshit and go fuck themselves? Should you take them out to dinner first? Should you do it after church? Should you make sure you don't do it on their birthday? Should you call it? Should it be over the phone? At some point, it's like, what's the right way to come out to your family? I want people to have that framework. What's the right way to come out to your family? Whichever way comes out your fucking mouth. What's the right time? Whenever it comes out your fucking mouth, right? Like, because it's such a serious thing that I really do think. All right, so you guys know, a lot of you, maybe some of you guys don't know, but I went to school to be a dating coach, right? That was originally what I was gonna do in addition to being a lawyer. And so I got a degree in social dynamics, and I wanted to be the best dating coach in the world. So I think I got quite skilled in that area of my life because I was deathly serious about it. And it led to my current studies in evolution. But there was a phenomenon that we talk about all the time, and I think it applies in this community, and it's called analysis paralysis, right? It's what happens because you've been reading too many books about how to meet women, and because you have been learning too many different strategies and tactics of what to say. And what happens is you end up sabotaging any chance you have of actually having an interesting or fun and compelling social interaction because you just overthink everything. So most of the time, you don't even act, right? Most of the time, you see a cute girl from across the room, you spend so much time thinking about which tactic you should do or what's the best approach or what you should say, and then you start running down, well, then what she says this, and then right, and then is that, well, then I'm gonna have to do this, and da-da-da-da-da. And by the time you finish slurping your drink and thinking about what to say, you look and she's already on the other side of the room dancing with some other dude, right? Like, opportunity missed, right? Opportunity missed. People ask me, Jay, what is your favorite line? I always say my favorite approach is, hi, my name's Jay, it's nice to meet you. Right? It's the one I never have to think about. It's always true. It's genuinely sincere. And it either works or it doesn't. A person either wants to talk to me and they're like, hi, I'm so-and-so, nice to meet you too, right? And we're off to the races, or not. And nice to now I don't know how to think about it anymore. But seriously, like, I think we do the same thing. And again, I think it only suits them. That's what, I hate to say this, but that's what I want if I'm a cult leader. I want my members to present themselves as so fucking fragile, so insecure, that you are just wrapped with guilt over the thought of even challenging them. And so you just don't. You just don't. Now, the other interesting reason I would tell people, again, interesting read, and that's what we're here for as a community, right? I think part of what we do in our community, I'm joking from the Uncle Bobby perspective, but I'm like, I'm now officially your uncertified self-defense from religion instructor, right? And part of what I want people to understand in terms of defending against religion is stop acting like the religious don't know how to defend their religion. I think what a lot of people think is they're caught up in like this illusion that there's this really hard separation between, say, a pew filler, a preacher or evangelist, and an apologist. And really,
But there is. I'll let you finish your thought, but I am absolutely on the opposite side of you. There is.
Okay, I don't mean that there is no difference in terms of what they do. Like, there's a there's a difference between a person who, plays on the team versus sits in the stands. But what I'm talking about is the heart of their Christianity is there's way more overlap. And so what I'm getting at is, even if someone isn't a sophisticated apologist or evangelical missionary, what you're going to realize is when it comes to a conversation where they have to defend their faith, or you have a conversation with them about your lack of belief, they are going to immediately turn into an apologist. And the reason is, even if they're just a pew filler or just a, you know, atheist on YouTube, or just somebody who's in the choir or whatever it is, just by sitting around in church on Sunday all the goddamn time, just by participating in their Christian community, just by watching, you know, Christian YouTubers and all this stuff, they have passively absorbed a ton of the apologetics. And so even my mother, who doesn't know any of this stuff and never wants to debate, immediately whipped out every freaking debate tactic you see on YouTube. She didn't do it knowingly, she didn't do it conscientiously, but she did it because it's baked in to how you defend the faith. And defending the faith is baked in to the community. So that's what I'm saying, and that's what I mean to say. And all I'm saying is to say, just have the conversation, because if you go to tactics for this and tactics for that, you're making the same mistake the apologist makes. Like if you watch Uncle Bobby critique Frank Turek or one of these guys who goes around college and then does the street epistemology to college kids, right? One of the points he's always making is that person did not expect to wake up this morning and have a conversation with whoever this apologist is, right? So they're in a sense being ambushed, right? And a lot of times they still, even ambushed, they defend it fine. That's why they've got to do all the damn creative editing, right? But what I'm saying is, we can make this mistake too as atheists. We can wake up in the morning going, oh yeah, well, I've been preparing for this conversation with my mom or my grandma for months because I've got all my tactics figured out from my community. And then you go to have a conversation with them as though they're an unsuspecting Christian who's not gonna have a response to any of these things. And the conversation's gonna go so well because they're not going to have any defense to your tactics. It's like, no. Trust me. They've got defenses to every tactic you're going to whip out that they got from just going to Christian school by being a Christian for 30 or 40, 50 years, whatever it is. So I'm just saying, like, it's all a waste. It's all going to come out anyway. It's all going to play out however it's going to play out. So you might as well just have the conversation rather than spending 6 months preparing for the conversation, because it is going to be what it's going to be anyway. If they're going to lose their temper, if they're going to have an emotional breakdown, if they're going to be manipulative towards you, there's pretty much no tactic I can think of that is going to genuinely avoid triggering their defense mechanisms, because they're already on the hunt to have their defense mechanisms triggered.
Yeah. I mean, I think it does. I agree with all of that. Like, that all makes sense. But
Yeah.
you know, when I go into a discussion with, if I were to go into that discussion with a family member, for example, let's say I gave a shit about that connection, and they're very religious Christian, and like, I'm emotionally so invested in that relationship that I'm worried that it will dissolve if I push them too hard or whatever. You know, I'm probably just going to focus on helping them understand where I'm at on my journey and not try to deconvert them. What I've realized recently about Christianity is that it is, for the most part, a trauma response. It's a cope. And I don't think there's a whole lot of exceptions out there. Now, some people are just casually Christian because they were simply raised into it and they just aren't a deep thinker, right? It's just a crutch that they were raised to use, and they don't think a whole lot about it. But most people who are Christians, especially the ones that get really invested in it, it's a trauma response. They're carrying around unhealed trauma from the abuses or neglects from their childhood, and if they wouldn't know how to cope without it. It's a cope. And
2000%, James.
Yeah, until that trauma gets healed, or until they learn a new way, a better way to cope with the trauma, they're going to defend that crutch with their life. They'll beat you half to death with it if you try to take it from them, right? Because they're not ready. They're afraid, and they don't know how to cope without it. And so if you try to take it from them, if you tell them that, you got to go put the crutch down, they're thinking, and they're correctly thinking, but if I put this crutch down, what do I have? I don't know how to walk without it. I'm afraid to walk without it. It's going to hurt if I even try. And they're probably right.
Mm-hmm. I don't want to turn it this way. I'm only going to talk about it for a hot second. It's like the N-word. It's trauma. It's motherfucking trauma. And if I got pissed off at everyone who said the N-word all the time, I would never stop being angry. You know what I mean? But I also know that this social construct is not used in the same way as it was originally used. That's why I don't get mad at every single Christian that I come across, because they're not fundamentalists for the most part. They're they're trying to put their own humanity into their own faith on a certain level as well.
Right, but the problem is they're overlooking the inhumanity of the faith. That's why this stream is called James Apperson Destroys Atheism, because to me, we've reached our capacity. That's cool. We can hang on. We'll have to see how Carrie Ann's thing is. We were in here in case anybody of the public wanted to join us. So now we've got 10 people in here, but everybody in here is a member, which is fine. I don't care. Because to me, that's the challenge for us. The real message here is it's the overlooking, right? And I think that a lot of times and this is just different atheists see it differently, but for me, we're shooting ourselves in the foot because we're allowing them to overlook the problems with their faith. And they're coming from a very selfish place. That's what James' stream was about. It was about helping us understand the selfish place that people are coming from. But my thing is all right. Here's how I see it. They're the victims of abuse. And even though they may want to stay with their psychopathic, abusive sky daddy, it's not ethical for me to tell them that it's okay to. And that's just where I'm at. And that's what I took from this that I think is a challenge to atheists. And I'm not saying that everybody's got to call their mother or call their grandmother but what I'm more hoping to get people to understand, because look, don't defend. It does
sound like you're kind of saying that like 10%.
I am, but if you can't, then you just can't, and I don't want to keep talking about it because I know people just can't. Give yourself permission to not, but to me, it's an example, because the example I'm trying to say is we're giving people a pass. And a lot of times we're giving people a pass because we know them, because we're close to them, because we love them. And I want us to see the issue with that. Now, if you're not ready to do that, then fine, you're just not ready to do that. But that's in fact the problem, right? Because because Christianity to me has already figured out the soft sell. They've already figured out don't talk about hell publicly, right? We've been dealing with a lot of this shift. And James, I used to say this with you, right? I used to say that you and I would love to go through a church's lectionary, right? And say every Sunday it's going to say what the topic is and who's preaching it, right? And then we're just going to strike a red Sharpie through, just don't preach that one sermon against homosexuality. Yeah, just don't preach that one anti-evolution message, right? And what we were saying is it'd probably just be 3 to 5 sermons that we really had a problem with, right? Because everything else is just love Jesus, be a better neighbor, stop cheating on your spouse, whatever. So the conversation with them that I thought would be great was we could probably get most churches on board with that. Like, look, dude, if you think just getting rid of these 4 or 5 sermons is going to dramatic, I'm telling you, it's not. Trust it. Just try it for a year. Get rid of these 4 or 5 sermons, and I guarantee your church will be fine, right? And it would be because people don't.
The Catholic Church did that. That's why they got the new Pope in.
Right. Because they just scratch those ones out. But here's something I've been thinking about since that with Lena, is that's kind of a bad idea for us, because what it does is it allows them to ignore those issues, right? And then in many cases, probably assume a certain harmony. And now it's like we don't even have to talk about that, right? So, and what I realized, because Lena just had a church start near where they're at, and I was talking about like the church I was playing at and stuff, where if you went to these churches, even the church we covered recently that did that revival, that school, right? The something revival. What's the name of that school, right? They just did the revival recently, and we covered it actually on our channel. It's a big revival. Their doctrine is like freaking hidden, right? So of course they still believe in biblical authority and marriage between a man and a woman and all the problematic things that we have a doctrine with. They just have realized, don't talk about it. Don't talk about it. It's bad for PR. It's bad for PR. Like, why bring that stuff up? You don't even need to. So what I'm getting at is Christians have figured that out. And if we're going to let them use that as an out, then it's pretty much game over. Because they've already figured out, just take your humanism and wrap it in Christianity and call it good to go. And if the rest of us are going to go, oh yeah, well, if you're going to do that, then you're good to go, then we're not coming at Christianity, because those people are still enabling the fundamentalist interpretation. They're still going to these churches that probably are a lot more fundamentalist than you'd like to think, especially knowing, like, go sit up in there on a Sunday. I'm sure you're going to hear some problematic stuff. That's still what they're supporting. That's still what they're funding. Those are still the messages that they're elevating. They're still voting for candidates like that, even on the left. So it's like, you don't have to go after the people that are you know and love, because knowing and loving them to me is enough reason not to right there. Like, not everybody's going to be wired like me. I'm bipolar and totally unfiltered, right? But what I want us to be able to do is see how this is influencing those relationships. That way, especially when you can have the conversation, you are more willing to have the conversation, especially because I think, and this is again where I'm going to be out of line with a lot of people in our atheist community, but fuck it, this is the show for going there. I think we're being selfish. What I hear a lot of times, what people are saying is, somebody, so-and-so's Christianity doesn't bother me enough. And that bothers me because I was the Christian who was nice, who was smart, who was involved in science, who wasn't a vocal LGBTQ plus ally, a vocal ally, public speaking ally, right? So people would have said, Jay is not a problem. So therefore, when Jay comes up to you and says, oh, hey, brother, how you doing? Oh, da-da-da-da-da, Christian this, Christian that, leave it alone. Why? Right? And it's why I feel like, because I was on Neil, the 604 Atheist channel yesterday, doing the deconversion story, right? And part of the difficulty of me telling my deconversion story is it took so damn long. It feels like it took like a decade or more, and it feels like I did it by myself.
So what? You're putting too much weight on yourself with that. I heard you talk about that the other day. I want you to know, don't be mad at yourself that it took so long. I'm
not mad at myself. I'm frustrated that I see people not. I see people just. And I talked about this earlier, so it was just, I see what us do is we put a lot of qualifiers in front of the Christianity we have a problem with. That gives the people close to us a pass. They don't identify as fundamentalist. They don't identify as evangelical. They don't identify. And so then when we speak out against Christianity, they feel like we're not speaking out against their Christianity. And then on top of that, we tell them, well, I'm not speaking out, I'm not a problem, right? And then that is not helping us challenge Christianity. And so that is like why I feel like this message that James kind of tapped into how selfish it is, even when it's coming from the basis of their self-experience and just, I have this, my own desire to go to heaven. It's like, well, dude, look at everything you're overlooking just so that you can hold on to your selfish desire to go to heaven. And then, yes, so that's what I'm thinking.
I have a question, just super quick,
Go ahead.
my friend, and then you got it. But I gotta ask Jay this question, and you're gonna make me use the term, and you know I hate the term. I'm gonna devil's advocate here.
Okay.
If everything you're saying is true, why didn't you go harder at Ken Ham?
You mean Ken Hovind?
Hovind, yeah, Ken Hovind. They're both the same to me. Why didn't you go harder at Ken Hovind?
That's a good question. I don't think that was. Faith wasn't the topic that day, right? It was evolution debate. And for me,
it was faith. Come on, you were talking to Ken Hovind. It was faith.
But I couldn't. I don't know. There was a lot of things. So, to be honest with you, I thought that was sort of something, like, we talked about it before, right? Like, I thought we dealt with the creative challenge. Like, let's go in there and do something fun. So there was a lot of things going on. One, I think people should realize I really wanted to represent myself in a way that wasn't something I couldn't show my students, right? And I think the sort of debate me bro dumpster fire thing is not useful for that perspective. So that was one of the things. Also, Donnie was very clear that he did not want that debate to be a dumpster fire. And I also just thought I had Kent Hovind on the issue. Like, I thought we were talking about evolution on trial. I thought it was, I thought we did that. I don't know. I think it's a good question, but I don't think that was the setting for it, I guess would be in general my response.
Right. So now we should all go at our family members harder than you went at Ken. I don't agree with this. I'm just throwing the devil's advocate out there.
So these are good questions. So if you're having I don't think that, again, and maybe this is just a bit of inside baseball, but I've watched a few of Kent Hovind's debates. To be honest, I had the debate with Kent Hovind to call him out. So there was a sense in which there was a lot of antagonism, and I thought I was incredibly antagonistic towards him in my own space, right? And even if you are going to have conversations with somebody, like, to me, it's okay to do some rapport building first, right? So I think of, like, the Darrell Davis example. Like, why are you sitting down with a Klan member? If you're buddy-buddy with a Klan member just to be buddy-buddy with a Klan's member, then I think that's pretty fucked up. Mm-hmm. But if you're befriending a Klan's member as part of an effort to build rapport so you can, eventually deal with this issue with them, then I think that's a different story. And so, if ever there were gonna be an opportunity for me to continue interacting with Ken and have interactions with him down the road, I would absolutely plan to have very challenging conversation with Ken, and I always have, but I don't think they would take place on air, right? The same way the challenging conversations I don't think with your family members should take place on air. Sure. But also I know that whole Donnie thing and Kent Hovind, like, there's a way in which those conversations are not about faith. They can't be like, you shouldn't even bring it up, don't talk about the Bible. Now, maybe that's something I could have brought up at the beginning so people would have known that. But yeah, I kind of look back at that, and maybe that's a little bit enlightening for me as to why some people were frustrated. But like I said, it was about evolution on trial, and I think when I do that, as an evolutionary biologist, it's not about atheism versus religion, even if he tries to make it that way, right? Because that's where he wants to go. And as professionals, we can't do that. In that sense, you are better off calling Arn Ra or somebody who doesn't feel like they have to toe a line on that. But yeah, I don't know. I also just think the truth is I don't have a relationship with Kent Hovind, right? And that's a thing that I think gets lost in a lot of these type of interactions online, where I don't feel like I'm giving pass to this person's Christianity because I'm not, right? Like, we're not friends, right? Like, and there's no way we could become friends without this coming to the table, right? Ken Hovind thinks I'm going to fucking hell, and he would tell me that to my face. Yeah. Oh, we ain't friends, right? You see what I'm saying? Like, so it's kind of different like that. But yeah, I think you have to. You got to decide, right? To me, I don't think Kent Hovind is. I think he's a lost cause, right? And there might be a lot of people in your family that are a lost cause, but I would just say acknowledge that if you can, right? It's complicated, but yeah, I think those are good questions. But yeah, I think there's a lot of different things there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had some thoughts about it.
Yeah, go ahead, James.
And I can't remember the name of the article that I shared with you that was specifically about this. We talked about it after the debate.
I remember this, yeah, but I forget which one it was.
I tried looking it up. I couldn't remember the name of it. Basically, it said that the only right way to show up for a debate like that is wearing clown shoes. Because you don't... That's a quote from the article, and I just wish I could remember what it was called.
Yeah, it had the guy in clown costume, yeah. Yeah.
Right. So... you know, there's lots to unpack there, but one of the things was, look, when for anybody listening that didn't see the debate, or even if you did, Kent presents to his audience this list of things that that students and teachers in evolution don't realize or won't admit, right? And so one of the examples was, here is a picture of different species, different creatures in time, right? And here's lines connecting them, and it's just a picture of like an evolutionary tree or whatever. And Kent's position is, look, just because you have a page with pictures on it with lines drawn between them doesn't mean that proves evolution, right? And Jay clarified, Kent, you're right. That picture, drawing lines between pictures, doesn't prove evolution, right? What Jay was letting everybody know is, he is, a dual PhD evolutionary biologist, and he's clarifying for Kent's audience, we don't think that this picture with lines on it proves evolution. We don't. Right. We agree with Kent Hovind that this doesn't prove evolution, right?
Right.
And so everything that Jay agreed with him on, everybody in the university would agree with. Everybody that Jay learned from would agree with. And it's important to let Kent's audience know, but in a disarming sort of way, that where Kent thinks the line is drawn isn't where the line is drawn.
Right.
No pun intended.
And I did also ask the question, how do they draw the lines?
Right.
Go ahead, James. Go ahead. Sorry.
So, yeah, I appreciate it. I thought it was a good approach. But yeah, I understand a lot of people wanted Jay to come in there, swing in, and be brutal and get into a heated debate. But it accomplishes nothing when we do that. That's the irony of it. That all we do is it further polarizes the audience. And it was successful in a way, and you could tell by Kent's audience's responses, because they were upset. They weren't happy. They were pissed.
They were.
Because
yeah,
they didn't get the polemic that they were after that reinforces their narrative, and that was the more important thing to them, and that's what Jay didn't give them. And so in that kind of a way, for the setting, it was brilliant, I thought.
Yeah, they thought we did a tremendous job manipulating Kent, which was ironic. Yeah, I also wish people would rewatch that debate, because I think it's worth it, and I think Maybe we'll revisit it. I think there's a lot of moments people kind of just missed. But yeah, maybe it would be worth revisiting. Maybe it's been long enough. But no, I do want to kind of keep us on topic. So
I've got to
I know you
excuse
probably got
myself.
to
I gotta
you
go.
have to
Yeah,
jump.
I gotta
Yeah.
go.
Thanks so much, my one black friend. We'll see you next
Thank you
week.
all.
Yeah, it's been great.
Good to see you again. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Yeah, thank you so much. We'll see you later. All right, so James, tell us, when you made the stream, did you have atheist in mind, or were you just more focused on the sort of talking about the sort of selfishness of the?
Oh yeah, clearly when I got to that point, right? Like I said, stop pretending that these people are too slow in the head to understand or too emotionally fragile to hear about it. Stop doing that. Right? That wasn't addressed to Christians, that was addressed to atheists.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got you. Yo, I think it's okay though to have all these conversations about tactic and stuff when you're talking to people in your personal life because of the setting, because of the proximity and everything with these people. Like I know, for example, with my mom, if I come out to her and say, "Mom, I'm atheist," and I just leave it there, she's going to like fall off a cliff spiritually, and like because that is such charged and loaded language to her. But like I just did earlier today, because it's Sunday, um, I text her, "Hey, I know you're probably speaking today at church. Thanks for being the type of Christian Paul would hate." Because she's a woman with her head uncovered, speaking in a church on Sunday to men about what it means to be a Christian. I can send her that, and that's not the same thing. I know it's not the same thing, but it also.
Do you really think her spirituality be devastated if you told her you're atheist? Because I think it might not be. I think, honestly, Wayne, I think the way
We
a
had
lot
that
of these people are so committed to their faith, I don't think it would shake their faith. They're not gonna. She's not gonna stop, but she's not gonna stop believing, right?
I don't think she'll stop believing, but it would cause short-term irreparable harm to our relationship because this happened before. I've told her before that I straight up don't believe. So I don't want her to go through that again because I know how she's going to react. It's like it's a mental health thing. I'm not calling somebody who believes in Christianity inherently crazy, but it is like a mental health thing. If a person has a belief structure or a certain like crutch that like keeps them going, like you don't remove that crutch even if that crutch is delusional, even if that crutch is like crazy as hell. You don't just outright say, "Oh, you're just believing in bullshit." Like that's not how you treat someone if you want them to get better, you know.
I don't know. I think you've got to start. You've got to start. You
Has to
can't.
be
They
started.
can't. They can't. You can't get rid of a problem you don't know you have. I think it has to start at some level with the acknowledgement of the problem. And again, my message here is I just want to be clear because I really don't want people blowing up at me about this. Just set aside whatever relationships are too sensitive for you to challenge, because that's your limit. That's your comfort zone. That's where you are not comfortable. But I think we still need to be honest about what we're dealing with. And in a lot of these situations, we're dealing with what I talked about, compassion poisoning. You feel so bad for another person that you can't live your truth. And there are consequences for a lot of us for doing that. Number one, there are the consequences of you're not living your full truth with your intimate relations. And then also you potentially not being a real part of the a change or growth opportunity in that person's life, and that's unfortunate. And the other thing is, they're the victims here. Like I have so much less of a problem Nah, I can't even say that, because here's the thing. I actually don't think, at least not in our current society, that people fall into this stuff without an exploitive indoctrination campaign. And I'm covering the entire pseudoscientific spectrum, from fundamentalist religion all the way down to just like multi-level marketing and, you know, fucking essential oils type of bullshit, right? I cannot think of an example that is not like, that doesn't seriously require fucking with a person's mind in some way. That's, man, I wish I had. I'm gonna maybe be able to share some of these the videos of some of these talks from that science conference we went to. Oh, sorry, the Atheism conference we went to. But there was a great talk about this. And so, with that being said, I feel totally different than if a person had a security blanket of their own design. Like, if a person literally had an imaginary friend that they couldn't let go of, like, I'd feel totally different about that, because like I had an imaginary friend as a kid, and like a lot of people, no, I'm not talking about my personal experience, hear me out. I'm talking about the fact that there are certain phenomena that are like that they literally, a person can come up with them on their own. Like it's not a result of external manipulation. Now you can pair that.
Pause, because you're getting mad at people for the mechanism that they're using to get past trauma. You can't get mad at people for whatever they cling to.
I'm not mad at them for the mechanism they use past trauma. I'm just willing to tell
But if
them
they're
it's not.
clinging to Jesus instead of talking to an imaginary friend, why is that worse?
Because I'm not saying it, I don't think it's better or worse. I'm just saying it's different in the sense that in one case, potentially, and I don't even know that this is true. And again, I wouldn't tell somebody that their imaginary friends get to go. But what I'm saying is I could see it being different because it's not socially enforced or reinforced. If a person just, I don't know, like they come up with some fantasy on their own, right? And it's a fantasy of their own creation, and then they decide that that's their coping mechanism. Now, I'm not okay with that because they're not learning how to fucking cope, and their imaginary friend doesn't exist. But what I am saying is they're not a victim of being of indoctrination by other people in the same way. And so what I'm saying in the case of, let's say my mother, let's take my mom for an example. My mom, to me, deserves to know that God isn't true, because she deserves the opportunity to learn how to cope on her own. Now, I can't make her take that opportunity, but it's different because she is a victim of the indoctrination, mostly of her own parents. And so that's all I'm saying is there's a different situation, because this is like Uncle Bobby. When Uncle Bobby and I had to talk about battered spouse syndrome and how religious indoctrination essentially manifests the same symptoms, right? That was one of the things he was super strong about, is like, you cannot enable the abuser. Meaning, when they come to you and you know that your friend, let's say your friend is in an abusive relationship, and you know that partner physically is abusive to this person, you cannot sit there and celebrate when she says to you, oh, he's a great provider, and he's a wonderful coach for the soccer team, and he's really a great lover, and I don't know where I'd be without him. Like, she may feel that way, and you can allow them to feel that way, but you cannot participate in that yourself, because what you're doing is you're enabling the oppressor. And so what we're just not, and I get that this is not comfortable for us, but that's part of what I'm trying to do with my channel, is get people to see atheism as a social group that really does need to fight to no longer be treated as second-class citizens in our own lives. And I do believe it requires a a sort of mass, coming out, and that this is some of the challenges of reckoning with that. But I don't think it's going to be easy, certainly.
Well, yeah, it's not going to be easy at all. I just don't want you to. It's not. When you say it's indoctrination, and it is, but you have to understand if somebody's indoctrinated, they're so deep in it, it's an all-consuming thing, and you are asking people to give up an all-consuming thing in their life.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just a bad relationship; it's every relationship, and
Yes.
most people don't walk away from that shit cold turkey.
Mm-hmm. That's a limit to my compassion. I see it very similar, like what James was saying about the the paradox of tolerance, right? And how I resolve that is I don't claim to have unbounded tolerance. I don't claim to be the most tolerant person. I don't tolerate intolerance. It's a paradox, but I settle it by just saying, yeah. If you're an intolerant person, I'm not going to be tolerant towards you. People could call it what they want and say what they want, but that's how I resolve it, right? And it's the same thing here. For me, it's just I feel bad that people are in this situation, but you gotta pull them out of it, right? There's no that is what religion does to people, right? It gets so deep in the person's soul, into their identity. They identify with it so strongly that it becomes like an addiction, like. They're stuck.
It's not an addiction. It's a social construct. Like it's not just in your head. Like you keep talking about like it's a mental illness. Not you're saying that directly, but a lot of the language that you're using, like it's just like it's a choice that
I'm not sure that it's not.
it's not. If it's a mental illness, then capitalism and patriarchy are mental illnesses.
I'm not
And
sure that they're not. I mean, like a
I
lot of the
can't.
ideologies, and also I'm not sure that that's true. I don't want to have those. I'm not like prepared to have the necessary conversation to compare the two. But I listen. I think we're dealing with a form. I mean, I think we're dealing with an insidious form of insanity. I mean, I feel very strongly about like what Sam Harris was saying. We are really talking about people who are not coming to grips with the obvious. I mean, we are in 2 + 2 = 17 territory. Now, I'll be the first to admit that I'm not qualified to diagnose people who believe 2 + 2 = 17. But when we get to 2 + 2 = 17 territory, I am qualified to say reasonable, socially, emotionally, and cognitively functioning adults don't reason this way. Now, we could talk about the whys and the hows and the whatevers, but yeah, I do think there really is something wrong with in their heads. Like that, yeah. I honestly, if I could convince my mother to seek treatment, I would. If I could convince my grandparents to seek treatment, I absolutely, because you that we can't I don't think we can have it both ways. I don't think we can literally say we have to show so much compassion to these people because they're psychologically dependent on a fairy tale. But we can't say there's anything wrong with them cognitively. Like, bro, they need help. I don't know. Like, to me, this is what I'm saying. Why do we play word games with each other on their behalf? Like, that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Because I think you're talking about fundamentalism.
I'm not. I'm talking about Christianity. I'm talking about all Christians. If you believe
but
that,
they're not as Christian as you think. If they're already changing their behaviors relative to the book, they're not as Christian as you're saying. They're not the fundamentalist hardcore. They may be like that when you ask them questions directly, but just in their personal behavior, you
but
know
they're
that they're less Christian.
ignoring.
Right, and you are absolutely correct in
And
that.
that is toxic, and they should be ashamed of themselves. Like, I don't like. This is what I'm saying. Like, I just think I just think this is, and again, Wayne, you don't pretend you're just pretend you're talking about a different Christian than your mother. Like I don't know.
I understand it. I get what you're saying. I'm just saying, like, my line is the fundamentalism. That's the reason why we're upset every time a person
Because
denies another person.
well, then I think we're just trying to have a different conversation.
Let me finish this. You're upset because they believe in a book that denies humanity, and every time push comes to shove, well, not every time, but the majority of the time, when a person is on their own, not with their church, and they have to choose, am I going to be shitty towards another person, or am I going to, like, kind of, try and finesse this, come up with some hermeneutics, something on this to change the meaning of it so I don't have to be shitty to this person. The average person in your lives, the average Christian, is going to finesse their belief structure so that they can be less shitty in general. So, like, that's them not being a Christian right there. Even though they're proclaiming it, they're not actively being. Every time you're not fundamental, I think that's a victory.
All right.
That's in our direction. That's more humanity.
But that's not the conversation. But I'm deliberately and intentionally very much this entire stream specifically trying to have a conversation about all Christianity that is not that, because that's the problem. I'm tired of putting all the qualifiers in front of Christianity. All Christians support Christian fundamentalism. Whether you're a Christian fundamentalist or not, it doesn't matter.
I don't think so. That's why they have to shuffle priests, because if they didn't shuffle priests, motherfuckers would be more upset.
So then stop being Christians if you're not being Christians. Like, that's the problem. We're allowing the soft sell to pass as progressive. If they're smart enough to realize I should not be shitty to this homosexual, then they should. Then it's okay. Then you seem to be functioning enough to have an honest conversation about your faith. And if they can't, then yeah, I personally think there's something wrong with them. I really do. I think for you to be grown-ass people and you can't handle being told you're wrong about a particular thing that you're saying is the most important thing in your life. You should want to know if you're wrong about it. You should want someone to tell you it's not true.
Yo, Jay, though, how many people know that the sky is blue, but they have no fucking understanding as to why the sky is blue?
Okay, but the sky is blue, right?
Right, but I'm saying with Christianity, it's as pervasive as that. I'm not saying that Christianity is true. I'm just saying, like, it is so true to them that the book is true that it's the equivalent of the sky being blue.
So what do we do about it?
You continue to have those conversations, but coming in to the average Christian that has no social power over any sort of Christianity in their life outside of their own house, that conversation of, like, fuck your God is not going to be as fruitful as it would be with somebody who's a preacher. You get what I'm saying? That's why I hold people in the pews to a different standard than someone who's up there speaking.
But earlier it sounded like you were saying people in the pews are going to be the ones who most can't let go of it.
No, not at all, because they're the ones that aren't as fiscally invested. Like, that's the line.
Oh, sorry. No, I meant people in the pulpit. Sorry.
Oh. Okay, I get you.
Because our families are pulpit families. So this would argue that we should be harder against our families. It's part of why I'm hard against my family.
You should be harder against your family because y'all have a hand.
But your mom's in the pulpit.
She doesn't have it. You're right, but she's a woman on her own. She's not in the structure like that. It's not like a family church thing. It's not. She doesn't count money. My mom literally she doesn't make money from this. That's the line.
Rebecca doesn't make money from this.
Yeah, and I honestly, I'm like, why does he go like so goddamn hard at Rebecca? Like, you go infinitely harder at Rebecca than you do at standing for truth, which is weird to me. But that's my personal preference. I try not to hold it against you.
Rebecca's been personally disrespectful to me and is popular in our community. Donnie is someone
Nice to your
nobody in
face.
our community watches and is nice. Like, yeah, but what has Donnie ever done to me?
He edits videos for Kent Hovind on shit that's literally illegal to teach. He's the
Oh,
worst.
yeah, but he knows I think that.
That's worse. That's worse than what Rebecca does, and his reach is way further. You see, I don't want to get into it right now.
All right.
Sorry.
I feel like you just don't want to, like, yeah, I don't know why, I don't know, like, I don't feel like you're not, you're trying to take this somewhere else. I really want to talk about, because I think, I stand by what I'm saying, dude. The problem is, I don't know why atheists are working so hard to defend the Christians in their life. And I feel like, I don't know, I feel like now I'm getting more people showing up here to defend fucking Christianity. And it's like,
No, we're defending like the people that have to exist in the empire. I'm not existing empire. I'm existing the humans that have to exist in the empire, bro. I can't be mad at every single fucking Christian in the world.
I'm not
especially
saying be mad at them. I'm saying be
you
honest
are,
with
though.
them. I'm mad at them, and why shouldn't we be?
You see, you just did a double talk right there.
I think we should be fucking mad, but I'm not saying you have to be. You don't have to be angry to have a fucking conversation, but have the conversation. However you're gonna have the conversation, have the conversation. Am I angry about it? Yeah, I'm angry as fuck. I don't mind, and I don't mind being, like, clearly I'm angry about it. And I think more people should be. I think the Christianity is like the KKK, but it's the cool one. It's the one that apparently no mask required. And again, I think we have a community full of people who are supposed to be passionate about atheism, but don't really want to do anything other than talk about it on YouTube. And I don't understand, like again, I'm saying shit that if Seth Andrews or fucking or Aaron Ra or Matt Dillahunty said, everybody be like this. They say this shit all the time. Start local. We say this with every issue. I'm literally just advocating for atheists to come out of the closet. And all people seem to be doing, instead of supporting each other and coming out of the closet, is making excuses to stay in it. And yeah, I don't get that. And it creeps me the fuck out. Dog, I'm sorry, but like, you're not in a healthy relationship with the people in your family if you telling them you don't believe in the God they don't have any evidence for is so devastating to them and makes your relationship fall apart. And yes, that applies to I said this earlier, it applies to my own family, my own grandparents, and I'm actually at the point with them where I'm like, too fucking bad, because I just can't take it anymore. It was just too exhausting. Like, it is crippling exhausting to have to say, oh, wait, let me just put my entire life on hold. Let me just pretend to be an entirely different person so I make sure I don't upset my mother. Okay, cool. I really don't want to talk to people boring as shit.
Yeah, you shouldn't do that.
Well,
you really shouldn't do that.
But it's the bigger picture. There's a lot of us who are doing this, Wayne. I'm not doing it, but the issue is a lot of us are not there. Like,
and I understand that. And everybody
go ahead.
has reasons.
Stephanie, can you come up to the, we need you to come up to the stage or the spotlight towel by the podium. Oh, there you go. Now we can hear you.
Been a fascinating conversation.
Yes, thanks.
Yeah, I just, you mentioned Matt, and I'm sure he's said many times his approach to his family is quite different than his approach on The Line or AXP or anywhere like that. His approach with his family is, we don't talk about it. They know where I stand, they know my beliefs, but we don't talk about it because it's not conducive to, it's not conducive to playing cards.
Sure, but that's kind of what I'm saying is you have to go through to get through. A lot of us are not that place. If that's the place you're at, then that's fine, right? But to me, you've got to to me, people are they're having the we don't talk about it, but they know where I stand part isn't clear. And that's kind of what I think is more of an issue, right? Like, and the other thing is for me, and this is my own, I think that, I don't know, maybe I just think it's human nature to take advantage of people. But I think you only have equitable relationships when you demand it. And I think a lot of family dynamics are very unhealthy. And I do think the sort of Christian social paradigm is incredibly unhealthy. And so I do feel like there was just a certain toxicity in all my relationships with Christians that I needed to get rid of. And part of it was they don't take me seriously. I don't understand how I grew up in a household where my family having faith meant I had to participate in faith, where people making all these claims about God and all this stuff meant I had to take that seriously. And I did. I spent many years as a Christian. But again, when I come out, I don't think any of this is true. They're not, that requires them to do nothing. When I come out beyond that, I think this is a hate group. I think you guys are bigoted. I think Christianity, I think this is a bad group to be a part of. Doesn't obligate them to anything. I think this group discriminates. It discriminates against people like you. We could have that conversation, but it sure as hell discriminates against people like me. It obligates them to nothing. I'm sorry, you're not a good person. I don't want you in my life. What? Sorry, that's just me being too honest. It's just me being too honest. Sorry, you're not a good person. I don't want you in my life. Sorry, right? Talk about unequally yoked. What kind of fucking parent are you, right? Like, my mother disgusts me. What kind of parent are you that literally just ignore, like, and okay, fine. They're God addicted. But Jesus ruined my family. Period.
And she's simping for the white man's religion.
100%. 100%. It's just, and that's what I feel like. You just don't. They just don't care enough, and it bothers me. It's terrifying.
Or I get a Facebook message from my nephew saying, hey, couple of weeks, we're going to be having a celebration of my 30th year in active ministry. Can you come? Becky will be there.
How you feel about
my
that?
church wants you to be there. I want you to be there. I mean, I think at some point you have to ask, what does your religion mean to you? I mean, you can have that conversation. You can have that, and it can go both ways. What does your atheism mean to you?
Yeah, sometimes I feel that progress will require people to feel as strongly about their atheism as other people feel about their religion. That is one of the more honest things I said to my mother. I said, being an atheist is absolutely as important to me as being a Christian is to you, if not more. And so that is something, because I don't think we get to enjoy the privilege. I feel like we have these conversations sometimes. I don't know if you caught earlier, but we were reading from Sam Harris, and he was kind of saying that how atheists didn't sign up for this. We didn't ask for this. We don't want this. We didn't volunteer to be the voice of reason in the room. But that's what I feel like I'm fighting for, and yeah, it's an important cause for me.
fairly passionate about freedom from religion. You know, it's like one shouldn't be obligated to have any particular religious belief, whether it's an actual religious belief or no religious belief whatsoever. What difference does it make?
Yeah.
And I just think that's where it winds up. If your beliefs lead you to do things in society, that's what matters. It's where the rubber meets the road that matters.
I agree, but how we define action sometimes isn't the same. Like there's a spectrum of what counts as action. So, words are action. A lot of people speak as if words are a separate thing from actions. They say words and actions. And I'm like, no, words are actions. And I quit making that distinction.
Mm-hmm.
So, if they promote the label of Christianity, for example, then they're promoting everything that's in Bibles and everything that's in Christianity. They are automatically.
Well, that's an assumption on your part. It's not everybody promote you. You're unflexible in your willingness to accept another's definition of the God they believe in.
Oh, no, that's not how I mean it. What I mean is that even if they themselves, if you ask them point blank and they honestly tell you, no, I'm not endorsing everything that's in the Bible, I'm not endorsing all versions of Christianity, and I'll accept that. Like that, I expected that to be the answer, the true, real answer, but accidentally, incidentally, and unavoidably, they're endorsing the Bible and the whole of Christianity by doing PR work for the label. Even if they don't realize that that's what they're doing, that's what they're doing. And that's problematic. That's destructive in our world.
It's just kind of weird to me too.
Well, I don't know. That's like saying I love rock and roll. That if I love rock and roll means you're can you love rock and roll and passionately hate the Beatles? I mean, I'm old, so I don't just.
Yeah, I don't think I'm being correctly understood here. Jay, can you?
I mean, I don't know. I think. I mean,
see what I mean? Right?
I'm in a weird place because I think I kind of I think I'm guilty of what Stephanie's saying. Like for me, I see it as differently. Like I don't see rock and roll or any of these other things as ideologies or harmful influences of the world. For me, the way the religion is I almost see it as a mafia family where the Christians are all made men. And at the end of the day, they don't really like the racketeering scams and they don't, they're uncomfortable with the body count this year and you don't like the fact that every once in a while somebody gets their legs broken in the back alley. But as long as they're not doing the dirty work themselves, right? They're fine looking the other way. And for me, like I don't know of more insidious. I have a hard time thinking of something I think is more insidious than religion. And I think for me, I'm just trying to change the social dynamics around it. And I think we could do so much as atheists to just stop esteeming people with regard to their faith. Now, I think, in line with what James said in this video, we are doing ourselves a tremendous disservice. Some of us, I'm going to say, I think are doing it out of laziness. I think some of us are doing it out of trepidation. I think some of us are doing it out of an unwillingness to have uncomfortable conversations. But some of us are doing it for much more innocuous reasons. But we really do seem to be pretending as though these people are too stupid to have the conversation and too not fully emotionally equipped. They're too emotionally fragile to have a heart-to-heart.
I think the conversation is definitely one worth having, and to the extent that you're shy of having the conversation, then yeah, I think that is an expression of timidity. I mean, why not have that conversation? But the conversation can't be on either side. I mean, if the conversation with a Christian is evangelical, like you must submit to the will of God. I mean, that sounds a little bit more like Islam than Christianity. Open your heart to Jesus, that kind of thing. If that's the be all and end all, then the conversation is not going to go well, I don't think. Nor is the conversation going to go well if the opener is there's no God and you shouldn't believe in one because it's a sign of mental illness. I mean, that's not going to go either. I mean, a conversation, to me, is what to the extent that you hold any religious beliefs at all, what do they mean to you, and how do you get there? And then you get into the minutia of where the beliefs come from. Is it revealed? Is it personal experience? Is it the text of the Bible? Is it this or that or the other thing? And more importantly, what do you do with them? I mean, the church is gonna do its thing. The church is going to maintain its brand no matter what. But on the individual level, though, individual Christians are going to hew to the church insofar as they feel comfortable within that social structure, feel comfortable enough with the beliefs, feel comfortable with the person that's delivering the message every Sunday. And what message is that person delivering? That's another question, because it's not always the same. Not everybody gets up in the pulpit and thumps Bibles.
Right. Sure. Wishy-washy Christians make some of the best neighbors, man, because they're willing to work with reality and you and your humanity where you're at.
Well, that's the point.
That's
where
we disagree. We disagree strongly about that.
Well, listen, mate. The bishop of the New England Southern New England Methodist Conference is married to a trans dude. So am I gonna? Where am I gonna pick my battle?
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's the battle to pick. I've been clear about this. A lot of people just want to build atheist community. I get it. A lot of other people just want to create a safer point for religion. I want to end religion, and that requires a different conversation. It requires the heart-to-heart. And I have to be honest, I hate to sound like a parent, but even with my mom, it was this is going to hurt me more than it hurts you type of moment. I don't think she's there yet, but I expressed to her, I hope one day you will look back at this and you will realize how incredibly difficult and brave it is for someone to speak out against the religion of their family. But I do think that if we are not at least willing to let the people in our lives know that we don't believe there's a God, then we're treating atheism like a different part of our identity. We're treating atheism like a T-shirt that we can take off because we're in a room full of people who don't like metal T-shirts, and I don't like treating it that way. Go ahead, James.
What does atheism mean to you in this context?
I'll be honest with you, it means a lot.
Define it. Define what it is to you when you say that atheism is important. What is atheism?
It's that I identify as a person who doesn't believe in God, and that has, I get that I'm supposed to give the boilerplate answer. That atheism is simply me saying there's no God. But I live in a world where belief in religion is so important to people that identifying as someone who doesn't believe in a God affects every area of my life. And so for me, it's having to come to grips with the reality that there's no God and feeling like the world around me is not coming to grips with that with me. More importantly, I feel like atheists are discriminated against. I feel like we are a marginalized population. We are socially oppressed. And so I believe it requires activism to change that.
Yeah.
And I take strength, you know, I take inspiration, obviously, from the civil rights struggle for people of color. But I take even more from the queer community. The reason being is you can't hide being a person of color. So Black people have to fight for our rights because we can't take off our Black skin. But our queer community, who's always been the same way we've always been, in many cases could choose not to come out. They could play it straight. They could live as their assigned sex or gender, and they didn't. They didn't. And to me, this is the consequence of being an ally. Is you say, look at what it takes. Look at these people who are willing to, as Stephanie says, they're willing to stand at the tip of the spear. And then I go, I don't feel like we're doing that for atheism. I don't feel like a lot of us are willing to stand at the tip of the spear the same way for atheism we are for the queer community. And I think that's what it's gonna take. And the fact that we can't, in many cases, come out to our own families is terrifying to me because it suggests that we're not even there yet. We're not even at the point where it's considered socially acceptable that you might come up in a religious family and you just might turn out to be an atheist. And then when it is brought to the surface, this is something that I told my mom, because I would say this is where me and Matt Dillahunty would disagree. Right? Because Matt seems to have said, my family knows where I'm at, and so I know there's no good conversation. Let's skip it and talk about turkey and cards. I told my mom, one of the most hurtful things you've ever said to me is asking me what has to happen so that we don't talk about this. I said, to me, that felt like me coming out to you as a gay child and you telling me what has to happen so I won't talk to you about my homosexuality. I said, atheism is a huge part of my life. And I refuse to have a relationship where somebody tells me it's something I can't talk about. So that's where I'm at, James.
Fair.
Are we still live?
Yeah, we are. We need to end this damn stream. All right, look. We'll see you next time. In the name of Darwin and Dawkins, Christopher Rich, and Science bless you all. Bye-bye.